Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff where the wind carries the scent of ancient salt and the sound of waves hitting the rocks below feels like the heartbeat of the planet itself. We live on a sphere that is constantly changing, a blue marble spinning through the void, and yet we often forget how truly miraculous our home is. Today we are going on a journey that spans every continent to look at the wonders that define Earth in 2026. This is not just a travel guide. This is an exploration of the raw power and the delicate beauty that makes our world a masterpiece of cosmic coincidence and geological persistence. Think about the last time you truly felt small. Not small in a way that makes you feel insignificant, but small in a way that makes you feel connected to something massive and eternal. That is the feeling we are chasing today. Close your eyes and try to imagine a place where the mountains literally tumble into a sea so clear it looks like liquid sapphire. Picture ancient stone cities that have survived empires, paved with marble that glows under a Mediterranean sun, and hidden emerald lakes where waterfalls roar in a constant rhythmic dance. This isn't a fantasy novel or a high-budget movie set. This is Croatia. Today we are going on a journey through a land defined by its dramatic contrasts, from the rugged peaks of the Dinaric Alps to the sun-drenched shores of the Adriatic. We are exploring the hidden gems, the legendary landmarks, and the vibrant culture of a country that has quickly become one of the world's most desired destinations. But beyond the famous filming locations and the postcard-perfect beaches lies a story of resilience, history, and a deep connection to the earth. Whether you are a seasoned traveler or an armchair explorer, prepare to be captivated by the wonders of Croatia. Our journey begins in the far south at the crown jewel of the Adriatic, Dubrovnik. Approaching this city from the high coastal road is an experience that stays with you forever. The terracotta roofs of the old town emerge from the blue expanse like a fortified island of history. Known as the Pearl of the Adriatic, Dubrovnik is a masterclass in medieval architecture. Walking across the drawbridge at Pilegate, you step out of the modern world and into a living museum. The Stradun, the city's main limestone-paved street, has been polished to a mirror-like sheen by centuries of footsteps. It is here that you feel the true pulse of the city, but the real magic happens when you climb the city walls. Stretching for nearly 2 kilometers, these fortifications have protected Dubrovnik for centuries. From this vantage point, you can see the intricate layout of the monasteries, the hidden garden courtyards, and the relentless waves of the sea crashing against the base of the stone ramparts. It is a perspective that makes you realize just how formidable this maritime republic once was. As we move north along the Dalmatian coast, the landscape begins to shift. This region is a labyrinth of over 1,000 islands, each with its own distinct personality. We stop first at Hvar, an island that perfectly balances glamour with rustic charm. In the summer, the air here smells of lavender and salt. While the harbor is filled with sleek yachts and vibrant nightlife, just a short drive into the interior reveals ancient stone villages and terraced vineyards that have been cultivated since the time of the Greeks. The Stari Grad Plain, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, is a testament to this enduring agricultural legacy. Here, the land is still divided by the same stone walls laid out over 2,000 years ago. It is a humbling reminder of the continuity of life in this part of the world. From the sophistication of Hvar, we head to the rugged beauty of Brač. This island is famous for its white limestone, which was used to build the Diocletian's Palace in Split and even parts of the White House in Washington, D.C. But for most visitors, Brač is synonymous with Zlatni Rat, or the Golden Horn Beach. This unique spit of land extends into the sea like a finger of fine pebbles, its shape constantly shifting with the currents and the wind. It is a natural phenomenon that defies the typical expectations of a beach, offering a dynamic and ever-changing landscape. But Brač is more than just a beach destination. Climbing to Vidova Gora, the highest peak on the Adriatic Islands, provides a breathtaking view of the surrounding archipelago, a sea of blue dotted with emerald outcrops as far as the eye can see. Continuing our northward trek, we arrive at the gateway to central Dalmatia, Split. This is a city unlike any other in the world because it is built within and around a Roman emperor's retirement home. Diocletian's Palace, constructed at the turn of the 4th century, is not a stagnant ruin. It is the beating heart of the city. People still live in apartments within the palace walls, shops are tucked into ancient alcoves, and children play soccer against stones carved 1,700 years ago. Walking through the peristyle, the central square of the palace, you are surrounded by Egyptian sphinxes and soaring Roman columns. It is a place where layers of history are stacked on top of one another, where the transition from antiquity to the Middle Ages to the modern era is seamless and visible. The energy of Split is infectious, particularly on the Riva, the wide seafront promenade where locals gather to sip coffee and watch the world go by. It is the ultimate expression of the Mediterranean lifestyle, a slow and deliberate appreciation of the present moment. But Croatia's wonders are not confined to the coast. Leaving the salt air behind, we head into the mountainous heart of the country to discover Plitvice Lakes National Park. If there is a place on earth that feels truly enchanted, this is it. Imagine 16 terraced lakes connected by a series of 90 waterfalls, all nestled within a dense forest of beech and pine. The water here is otherworldly, ranging from brilliant turquoise to deep emerald depending on the mineral content and the angle of the sun. As you walk along the wooden boardwalks that crisscross the rushing water, you are surrounded by the sound of cascades and the mist of falling spray. The great waterfall, Veliki Slap, drops 78 meters into a limestone canyon, a powerful display of nature's raw beauty. Plitvice is a fragile ecosystem, a karst landscape where the very earth is constantly being reshaped by the interaction of water and rock. It is a place that demands respect and evokes a sense of profound wonder. Not far from Plitvice lies another aquatic masterpiece, Krka National Park. While Plitvice is about the serenity of the lakes, Krka is about the power of the river. The Krka River carves its way through deep canyons before expanding into series of travertine barriers. And the most famous of these is Skredinsky Buk, a massive natural pool fed by 17 waterfalls. Here, the water churns and foams, creating a landscape that feels wild and untamed. The park is also home to the tiny island of Visovac, which sits in the middle of a calm stretch of the river and houses a 15th century Franciscan monastery. The contrast between the roaring waterfalls and the silent, meditative atmosphere of the monastery is striking. It reflects the dual nature of the Croatian landscape, a blend of dramatic natural force and peaceful human contemplation. As we continue our journey, we reach the Istrian Peninsula, the northernmost part of the Croatian coast. Istria is often described as the new Tuscany, and it's easy to see why. The rolling hills are covered in olive groves and vineyards, and hilltop towns like Motovun and Grožanjan overlook fertile valleys. This region is a paradise for food lovers, famous for its truffles, world-class olive oil, and Malvasia wine. But Istria also holds remnants of a grand imperial past. In the city of Pula, you will find one of the best preserved Roman amphitheaters in the world. The Pula Arena once held 20,000 spectators for gladiator battles. Today, it serves as a stunning venue for film festivals and concerts under the stars. Standing in the center of the arena, you can almost hear the echoes of the past, a tangible link to the Roman civilization that shaped so much of this region's identity. The coastal town of Rovinj, also in Istria, is perhaps the most romantic spot in all of Croatia. The town is situated on a tight peninsula with colorful houses rising directly out of the sea. Its narrow winding streets lead up to the Church of St. Euphemia, whose bell tower dominates the skyline. Rovinj feels like a painting come to life, especially at sunset when the sky turns shades of orange and pink, reflecting off the calm waters of the harbor. It is a place that invites you to lose yourself in its alleys, to discover hidden art galleries and cozy wine bars tucked into the stone walls. There is a sense of timelessness here, a feeling that the modern world is a long way off. Moving inland from the coast, we eventually reach the capital city, Zagreb. Often overlooked by travelers rushing to the sea, Zagreb is a vibrant metropolis with a distinct Central European flair. It is a city of parks, museums, and a thriving coffee culture. The upper town, Gornji Grad, is the historic core, where gas lamps are still lit by hand every evening. Here you will find St. Mark's Church, famous for its colorful tiled roof depicting the coats of arms of Croatia and Zagreb. Below the upper town lies the lively Dolic Market, where farmers from the surrounding countryside bring their fresh produce, honey, and lace. Zagreb is a city that prides itself on its intellectual and artistic heritage, with a wealth of museums ranging from the prestigious Mimara to the quirky Museum of Broken Relationships. It provides a different perspective on the Croatian identity, one rooted in the continental traditions of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. But the real heart of Croatia lies in its people and their connection to the land. This is a country where traditions are held dear. In the hinterlands of Dalmatia, you might encounter the sounds of klapa, singing, a traditional form of a cappella male harmony that captures the soul of the Adriatic. The songs tell stories of love, the sea, and the hardships of life in the Kars Mountains. In the Zagorje region, north of Zagreb, traditional wooden toy making is still practiced, a craft that has been passed down through generations. These cultural expressions are not just for tourists, they are a vital part of the community fabric, a way of preserving a unique heritage in a rapidly changing world. The cuisine of Croatia is another window into its diverse soul. Along the coast, the food is quintessentially Mediterranean, focusing on fresh seafood, wild herbs, and the liquid gold of local olive oil. A simple grilled fish, drizzled with oil and lemon, is a culinary revelation. In the interior, the flavors become heartier and more robust. Pica, a slow-cooked dish of meat and vegetables prepared under a bell-like lid covered in embers, is a communal feast that embodies the hospitality of the Croatian host. And you cannot talk about Croatian food without mentioning the wine. From the deep, bold reds of the Pelješac Peninsula to the crisp whites of Slavonia, the country's viticulture is experiencing a renaissance as local winemakers reclaim ancient varieties and modern techniques to produce world-class bottles. As we look toward the future, Croatia faces the challenge of preserving its natural and cultural treasures while welcoming an ever-growing number of visitors. The balance is a delicate one. Efforts are being made to promote sustainable tourism, encouraging travelers to explore beyond the famous hotspots and to visit during the shoulder seasons. From the remote islands of the Kornati archipelago, a nautical paradise of raw, lunar-like landscapes, to the wetlands of Kopački Rit in the east, one of Europe's largest pearl of marshes, there is so much more to discover. These lesser-known regions offer a chance to connect with the authentic Croatia, away from the crowds and the clamor. Croatia is a land that rewards the curious. It is a place where you can hike through alpine forests in the morning and swim in the warm Adriatic by afternoon. It is a country that has been a crossroads of cultures for millennia, a place where East meets West, and where the ancient world still feels vibrantly alive. Whether it's the architectural wonder of a Roman palace, the natural majesty of a cascading waterfall, or the simple joy of a meal shared with friends overlooking the sea, the wonders of Croatia are as diverse as they are deep. Reflecting on the journey we've taken, from the ramparts of Dubrovnik to the streets of Zagreb, it becomes clear that Croatia is more than just a collection of beautiful sights. It is a feeling. It's the sensation of sun-warmed stone under your feet, the bracing scent of pine needles in the mountain air, and the overwhelming blue of the horizon. It is a place that challenges your perceptions and awakens your senses. To visit Croatia is to witness the incredible resilience of both nature and humanity, and to be reminded of the timeless beauty that exists in the world if we are only willing to look. As we conclude this exploration, think about what draws us to such places. Is it the desire for escape, the thirst for history, or the need to reconnect with the natural world? In Croatia, all these needs are met and exceeded. It is a destination that stays in your heart long after you've left its shores, a place that calls you back with the siren song of the sea and the quiet whisper of the mountains. The wonders of Croatia are not just meant to be seen, they are meant to be experienced, felt, and remembered. Our exploration of the Dalmatian coast continues with a visit to the island of Korčula, often referred to as a mini Dubrovnik. The town of Korčula is a marvel of urban planning, with streets laid out in a herringbone pattern to protect residents from the prevailing winds while allowing for cool air circulation in the summer. According to local lore, this was the birthplace of the famous explorer Marco Polo, and the spirit of adventure still permeates the air. Walking through the narrow alleys, you can see the influence of the Venetian Republic in the ornate carvings and balconies. The island is also home to the Mareshka sword dance, a dramatic traditional performance that tells a story of conflict and reconciliation, a powerful reminder of the island's turbulent history and enduring culture. Moving back toward the mainland, we find the city of Zadar, a place that seamlessly blends ancient ruins with modern artistic innovation. Zadar's Roman Forum is one of the largest on the Adriatic coast, surrounded by the sturdy walls of the 9th century Church of St. Donatus. But what truly sets Zadar apart are its contemporary installations. The sea organ, designed by architect Nikola Basic, uses the energy of the waves to push air through a series of underwater pipes, creating a haunting, melodic sound that changes with the rhythm of the sea. Nearby, the sun salutation is a massive circle of glass plates that captures solar energy during the day and rewards visitors with a spectacular light show at sunset. These modern marvels demonstrate that Croatia is not just a guardian of the past, but also a forward-looking nation that embraces creativity and technology. Further north, the Velebit mountain range rises like a giant wall between the coast and the interior. This is a region of wild beauty, home to Northern Velebit National Park and Paklenica National Park. For hikers and climbers, these parks offer some of the most challenging and rewarding terrain in Europe. The Premujic Trail, a 57-kilometer path through the heart of Velebit, provides stunning views of the islands from high alpine meadows. The vertical cliffs of Paklenica are a mecca for rock climbers from around the world. Here, The landscape is rugged and uncompromising, a wilderness where lynx, wolves, and bears still roam. It is a stark contrast to the gentle shores of the islands, highlighting the incredible geographical diversity compressed into this relatively small country. The region of Slavonia, in the eastern part of Croatia, offers yet another perspective. This is the country's breadbasket, a land of wide plains and meandering rivers like the Drava and the Danube. Slavonia is known for its hospitality and its rich folklore. In towns like Dakovo, the cathedral's twin spires dominate the flat landscape, and the Lipizzaner horse breeding tradition is alive and well. The food here is spicy and hearty, influenced by the proximity to Hungary and Serbia. Culinary specialties like kulen, a spicy cured sausage, and fish paprikas, a rich river fish stew, are central to the local identity. Slavonia is a place of quiet beauty and deep tradition, offering a slower pace of life that feels worlds away from the bustling coastal tourism. Returning to the coast, we cannot overlook the island of Vis. For decades, Vis was closed to foreigners as a secret military base for the Yugoslav army. This isolation preserved the island's authentic character, preventing the rapid development seen elsewhere. Today, it is a haven for those seeking a more tranquil and off-the-beaten-path experience. The town of Komija is a picture-perfect fishing village at the foot of Mount Hum, where the tradition of the Gajeta Falkusha, a traditional fishing boat, is still celebrated. But the most famous attraction of Vis is found on the nearby islet of Bishevo, the Blue Cave. Between the hours of 11 and 12 each day, the sun's rays enter an underwater opening in the cave and reflect off the white sandy floor, bathing the entire cavern in an ethereal, glowing blue light. It is one of nature's most spectacular optical illusions, a moment of pure magic that leaves visitors speechless. The Pakleni Islands, located just off the coast of Hvar, offer a different kind of island experience. This chain of wooded islets is home to secluded bays and crystal-clear swimming spots. While some areas are known for their vibrant beach clubs and social scenes, others remain untouched and peaceful. Boating between these islands is one of the quintessential Croatian experiences, allowing you to find your own private corner of paradise. Whether you're anchored in a quiet cove for a lunch of fresh grilled calamari or dancing the night away under the stars, the Pakleni Islands embody the spirit of the Adriatic summer. Imagine standing on a cobblestone street where the air smells like fresh rain on ancient stone, and the sound of a distant cathedral bell echoes through a valley that hasn't changed its silhouette in 500 years. You are not just looking at a postcard, you are breathing in the living history of Germany. Most people think they know what this country is about. They think of precision engineering, heavy mugs of beer, and perhaps a rigid sense of order. But if you scratch beneath that polished surface, you find a land of deep, haunting forests that inspired the world's most famous fairy tales, jagged mountain peaks that touch the clouds, and a culture that is as much about experimental art and vibrant nightlife as it is about tradition. Today we are going on a journey that spans from the windswept dunes of the north to the crystalline lakes of the Bavarian Alps. We are going to explore the hidden corners, the silent ruins, and the pulsating cities that make this nation one of the most complex and beautiful places on Earth. This is not just a travel guide, it is a deep dive into the soul of Germany. Before we get into the heavy hitters like Berlin or Munich, I want to take you to a place that feels like it was ripped straight out of a dream. High above the village of Hohenschwangau in southwest Bavaria stands Neuschwanstein Castle. You have seen it on every social media feed, and it served as the inspiration for the Disney castle, but seeing it in person is a completely different sensory experience. King Ludwig II, the eccentric man who commissioned it, was often called the fairy tale king, but his life was more of a tragedy. He built this massive, Romanesque revival palace as a personal retreat, a place where he could withdraw from public life and live in a world of Wagnerian myths. As you climb the steep path toward the castle, the mist often clings to the trees, parting just enough to reveal those white limestone walls and dark blue turrets. Inside, it is a fever dream of gold leaf, heavy silk, and intricate wood carvings. It is a monument to imagination, but also to a man who felt out of place in his own time. Standing on the Marienbrücke Bridge, looking back at the castle perched on its jagged rock, you realize that Germany is a place where the line between reality and fantasy is often blurred. But Germany is not just about the past. To understand the heart of the modern nation, you have to go to Berlin. This is a city that has been destroyed, divided, and rebuilt, and that scarred history gives it an energy you won't find anywhere else in Europe. It is raw, it is gritty, and it is incredibly creative. Walking along the East Side Gallery, you see the remnants of the Berlin Wall, now covered in vibrant murals that tell stories of hope, protest, and freedom. The Checkpoint Charlie area might feel a bit like a tourist trap, but if you walk just a few blocks away into the Kreuzberg or Neukölln districts, you find the real Berlin. This is where the world meets. You can grab a doner kebab from a street stall that has been run by the same family for decades, then walk into a contemporary art gallery housed in a former concrete bunker. The Brandenburg Gate stands as a symbol of unity now, but standing beneath it, you can almost feel the weight of the 20th century. Berlin doesn't hide its wounds, it wears them as a badge of honor, reminding everyone who visits that change is possible, and that even the most divided places can find a way back to each other. If Berlin is the brain of Germany, then the Black Forest is its heart. Located in the southwest corner of the country, this dense evergreen canopy covers nearly 6,000 square kilometers. It is the land of the Brothers Grimm, a place where you half expect to see a gingerbread house tucked away in a clearing. The sunlight struggles to pierce through the thick needles of the pine trees, creating a permanent twilight that feels both eerie and peaceful. Driving the Schwarzwald-Hochstrasse, or the Black Forest High Road, gives you sweeping views of the Rhine Valley and the distant Vosges Mountains in France. But the best way to see the forest is on foot. There are thousands of miles of hiking trails that lead to hidden waterfalls like the ones in Treberg, where the water tumbles down 7 tiers of rock. And of course, you can't leave without visiting a local Gasthaus for a slice of traditional Black Forest cake. It is a rich, decadent layer of chocolate, cream, and cherry soaked in Kirschwasser, a potent cherry brandy. It tastes like the forest itself, deep, complex, and a little bit wild. Let's move north toward the coast, a region often overlooked by international travelers who tend to stick to the southern mountains. The Hanseatic city of Hamburg is a maritime powerhouse. It has more bridges than London, Amsterdam, and Venice combined. The Spijkerstad, the world's largest warehouse district, is a stunning labyrinth of red brick buildings and narrow canals. At night, when the buildings are illuminated and the tide is high, the area feels incredibly cinematic. Hamburg is a city of water and commerce, but it also has a rebellious stake. The Reeperbahn in the St. Pauli district is famous for its nightlife and its history, as the place where the Beatles truly found their sound. It is loud, neon-soaked, and unapologetic. But just a short walk away, you find the Elbphilharmonie, a glittering glass concert hall that looks like a giant wave frozen in mid-air. It is a masterpiece of modern architecture and a symbol of Hamburg's ambition to bridge its industrial past with a high-tech cultural future. For those who crave history that feels even older, the Rhine Valley is the place to be. The stretch known as the Upper Middle Rhine Valley is a UNESCO World Heritage Site for a reason. As you take a ferry down the river, you pass castle after castle, each perched on a rocky outcrop like a silent sentinel. This was the romantic heart of 19th century Germany, a landscape that inspired poets like Byron and Goethe. The Lorelei Rock, where legend says a siren lured sailors to their doom with her song, marks one of the narrowest and most dangerous points of the river. The vineyards here are incredibly steep, with some of the world's best Riesling grapes clinging to the slate soil. Stopping in a town like Bacharach or Rudesheim feels like stepping back into the Middle Ages. The half-timbered houses, the narrow winding alleys, and the smell of roasting pork from the local taverns create an atmosphere that is quintessentially German. You can spend a whole day just wandering through these towns, tasting wine, and imagining what life was like when these castles were active fortresses protecting the trade routes of the Holy Roman Empire. Now let's head to the opposite side of the country, to the city of Dresden in Saxony. Often called the Florence of the Elbe, Dresden was almost completely leveled by Allied bombing during the final months of World War II. For decades, the ruins of the Frauenkirche, the Church of Our Lady, sat as a pile of rubble in the center of the city. But after the reunification of Germany, a massive effort was undertaken to rebuild the church and the surrounding historic center. Today, the Frauenkirche is a stunning landmark of Baroque architecture, rebuilt using as many original stones as possible. The contrast between the blackened old stones and the lighter new ones serves as a visual record of the city's destruction and rebirth. Walking along the Bruels Terrace, known as the Balcony of Europe, you look out over the Elbe River and realize the sheer resilience of the human spirit. Dresden is a city of art and culture, housing the Green Vault, one of the richest treasure chambers in the world, and the Zwinger Palace, a masterpiece of Baroque design that makes you feel like royalty just walking through its courtyards. Germany is also a land of incredible natural variety. If you head north to the island of Rügen in the Baltic Sea, you'll find white chalk cliffs that look like they belong in the Mediterranean rather than northern Europe. The Jasmine National Park is home to these ancient beech forests and dramatic cliffs that drop off into the turquoise water. It is a quiet, contemplative place far from the roar of the cities. Further inland, the Harz Mountains offer a different kind of beauty. This was once a mining region, but today it is a paradise for hikers and steam engine enthusiasts. The Brocken, the highest peak in the range, is often shrouded in mist and is the setting for the famous Walpurgis night celebrations in German folklore. You can take a vintage steam train all the way to the summit, chugging through the dense pine forests as the coal smoke drifts past the windows. It feels like traveling back to the Victorian era, a slow and deliberate way to experience the rugged landscape of central Germany. We cannot talk about Germany without mentioning Munich, the capital of Bavaria. While many people only know it for Oktoberfest, there is so much more to this city. It is a place where high-tech meets high tradition. In the morning, you can visit the Deutsches Museum, the world's largest science and technology museum, and in the afternoon, you can be sitting in the English Garden, a park larger than New York's Central Park, watching people surf on a standing wave in the Eisbach River. The Marienplatz is the heart of the city, dominated by the neo-Gothic New Town Hall with its famous glockenspiel that performs daily. Munich has a certain Gemütlichkeit, a word that doesn't have a direct English translation but conveys a sense of warmth, coziness, and belonging. You feel it in the beer gardens under the shade of chestnut trees where strangers share long wooden tables and plates of pretzels and Oberste cheese. It is a city that knows how to enjoy life, balancing its economic success with a deep-seated respect for leisure and community. As we travel further south from Munich, the landscape begins to rise dramatically. The Bavarian Alps are a playground for anyone who loves the outdoors. Garmisch-Partenkirchen is the gateway to the Zugspitze, Germany's highest mountain. You can take a cable car to the top where on a clear day you can see across 4 different countries. The air up there is thin and crisp, and the view of the surrounding peaks is nothing short of breathtaking. Nearby, the Partnach Gorge offers a more intimate look at the power of nature. A narrow path carved into the rock allows you to walk through the deep limestone canyon as the glacial river thunders beneath you. In the winter, the walls are covered in massive ice curtains, turning the gorge into a frozen cathedral. In the summer, the spray from the water provides a cool relief from the heat. This region is also where you find some of the most beautiful lakes in Europe, like Ybbsee, with its clear blue-green water reflecting the craggy peaks of the Waxensteinkamm. One of the most underrated regions in Germany is the Moselle Valley. While the Rhine is broad and majestic, the Moselle is winding and intimate. The river snakes through deep valleys flanked by some of the steepest vineyards in the world. The town of Cochem, with its hilltop imperial castle, looks like something out of a storybook. The wine culture here is ancient, dating back to Roman times. In the town of Trier, you can see the Porta Nigra, the best preserved Roman city gate north of the Alps. It is a reminder that Germany's history is layered, with influences from the Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, and the various German tribes that eventually formed the nation we know today. Exploring the Moselle is best done at a slow pace, stopping at small family-owned wineries to taste the delicate mineral-driven Rieslings that the region is famous for. The pace of life here is slower, dictated by the seasons and the river. Let's talk about a city that represents the futuristic side of Germany, Frankfurt. While much of Germany prides itself on its historic charm, Frankfurt embraces the sky. It is the financial heart of the Eurozone, and its skyline, nicknamed Manhattan, is one of the few in Europe dominated by skyscrapers. But even here, history is just around the corner. The Römerberg, the city's historic central square, has been meticulously restored, offering a glimpse of what Frankfurt looked like before it became a global banking hub. The city is also a cultural powerhouse with a museum embankment along the main river that houses everything from classical art to film history. Frankfurt is a melting pot, a place where people from all over the world come to work and live, creating a culinary scene that is as diverse as its population. You can find traditional apple wine taverns in the Sachsenhausen district serving hearty local fare, right alongside Michelin-starred restaurants pushing the boundaries of modern cuisine. If you are looking for a place that encapsulates the romantic image of Germany, look no further than Rothenburg Obu der Tauber, located on the Romantic Road, a popular tourist route through Bavaria and Baden-Württemberg. This town is one of the best preserved medieval walled cities in the world. Walking along its ramparts, you can look down onto the red-tiled roofs and narrow streets that haven't changed in centuries. The Plönlein, a small square with a yellow timber-framed house and a view of 2 towers, is perhaps the most photographed spot in the country. It is easy to see why. There is a sense of timelessness here. Even if the town can get crowded with tourists during the day, if you stay the night, you can join the night watchman's tour. As the sun sets and the crowds thin, the watchman leads you through the darkened streets, telling stories of the town's history, its legends, and its survival through the centuries. It is an atmospheric experience that brings the medieval history of Germany to life in a way that no museum can. Further north, the city of Cologne, or Köln, is defined by its massive cathedral. The Kölner Dom is a masterpiece of Gothic architecture that took over 600 years to complete. Its twin spires dominate the skyline, and for a short time in the 19th century, it was the tallest building in the world. Inside, the stained glass windows cast a multi-dimensional light across the cavernous nave, and the Shrine of the Three Kings makes it one of the most important pilgrimage sites in Europe. Cologne is a city with a distinct personality, known for its carnival celebrations and its local beer, Kolsch. Unlike the heavy mugs of Bavaria, Kolsch is served in small, thin glasses called Stangen. The waiters, known as Kobes, will keep replacing your empty glass with a full one until you put a coaster on top of it to signal you've had enough. This friendly, social atmosphere is typical of the Rhineland, where people are known for their openness and love of a good party. Another gem in the east is the city of Weimar. This is the intellectual heart of Germany, the place where the Weimar Republic was born and where giants of literature like Goethe and Schiller lived and worked. It is also the birthplace of the Bauhaus movement, which revolutionized modern design and architecture. The city is small enough to explore on foot, and every corner seems to have a connection to some major cultural or historical event. The park on the Ilm, designed in part by Goethe himself, is a beautiful example of an English-style landscape garden, perfect for a quiet afternoon stroll. Weimar is a reminder that Germany has always been a place of intense intellectual and artistic debate, a country that has survived political extremes to emerge as a center of European culture and thought. For nature lovers who want something truly unique, the Saxon-Switzerland National Park near the Czech border is a must-see. This is not the Alps. Instead, it is a landscape of bizarre sandstone rock formations, deep ravines, and table mountains. The Bastei Bridge is the most iconic landmark, a stone bridge built into the rock formations that offers dizzying views of the Elbe River below. The area is a paradise for rock climbers and hikers, with trails that wind through narrow rock clefts and up to hidden viewpoints. The mist often rolls through the valley, obscuring the base of the rocks and making the peaks look like islands floating in a white sea. It is a landscape that feels ancient and alien, a stark contrast to the rolling hills and dense forests found elsewhere in the country. We should also take a moment to discuss German cuisine because it is far more diverse than just sausages and kraut. While every region has its local specialties, there is a common thread of quality and heartiness. In the north, you'll find plenty of fresh seafood from the North and Baltic seas like matjes, pickled herring, served with onions and apples. In the west, the heavy influences of French cuisine are apparent, while in the east you find hearty dishes like Königsberger Klopse, veal meatballs in a caper sauce. Bread is a serious business in Germany, with over 3,000 different types officially recognized. A visit to a local bakery in the morning is a sensory delight with the smell of fresh rye, spelt, and sourdough filling the air. And we can't forget the Christmas markets, and if you visit Germany in December, the entire country transforms. Every town and city sets up wooden stalls decorated with twinkling lights, selling handmade ornaments, roasted chestnuts, and Glühwein, a hot spiced wine that warms you from the inside out. It is a magical time to experience the traditions and the communal spirit of the German people. England is one of those places that absolutely ruins you for everywhere else. And I mean that in the best possible way, because once you have walked through a village where the buildings are older than most countries, once you have stood on a cliff top watching the sea crash against chalk walls that have been standing since before recorded history, something shifts inside you. You start to realize that this small island nation somehow packed more beauty, more history, and more character into its borders than places 50 times its size. And today, I'm going to take you on a journey through the wonders of England. Not the England you think you know from movies and television, not just Big Ben and red phone boxes. I am talking about the England that takes your breath away, the hidden corners, the ancient landscapes, the places that make you feel like you have stepped through a crack in time. By the end of this video, you will have a completely different picture of what this country really looks like. So let me start with something that surprises almost everyone who visits England for the first time. The countryside. People come expecting gray skies and rain, and sure, England gets its fair share of drizzle. But what that rain creates is extraordinary. It creates a green so vivid, so impossibly lush, that it almost does not look real. Rolling hills that seem to breathe as the wind moves across them, fields stitched together by ancient hedgerows and meadows scattered with wildflowers that painters have been trying to capture for centuries. The Cotswolds is probably the most famous example of this. Picture honey-colored stone cottages with thatched roofs lining narrow lanes, gardens spilling over with roses and lavender, Streams running underneath tiny bridges, villages with names like Bourton on the Water and Castlecombe and Bybury. These are not movie sets, although plenty of movies have been filmed here, because the beauty is so concentrated it almost feels staged. Walking through the Cotswolds on a summer morning, with the mist still hanging low in the valleys and the church bells echoing across the fields, is one of those experiences that fundamentally changes how you see beauty. But here's the thing, the Cotswolds is just the beginning. Move further north and you find the Lake District, which is quite possibly one of the most beautiful places on Earth. I know that is a bold claim. I stand by it. The Lake District is where England flexes every natural muscle it has. Towering mountains reflected perfectly in glass-still lakes. Ancient woodlands where the trees twist into shapes that look like something from a fantasy novel. Waterfalls that tumble down moss-covered rocks into pools so clear you can count the pebbles at the bottom. There is a reason poets like William Wordsworth made this their home. There is a reason Beatrix Potter set her stories here. The Lake District has a magic to it that words genuinely struggle to capture, and unlike a lot of famous natural destinations around the world, it is not overrun with crowds. You can walk for hours along a ridge trail and see nothing but sheep and sky and mile after mile of jaw-dropping scenery: Helvellyn, Scafell Pike, Coniston Water, Windermere, Derwent Water. Every single name on the map delivers something unforgettable. Now let me take you somewhere completely different. The English coastline. This island nation has over 2,000 miles of coast, and it is astonishingly varied. On the south coast, you have the White Cliffs of Dover, those iconic chalk faces that rise dramatically from the English Channel. Standing on top of those cliffs, looking out toward France on a clear day, you feel the weight of history pressing against your back. This is where England has greeted and repelled visitors for millennia. Soldiers, traders, invaders, immigrants, those white walls have seen it all. But the drama does not stop at Dover. Travel west along the coast and you reach the Jurassic Coast in Dorset, a UNESCO World Heritage Site where the cliffs tell the story of 185 million years of Earth's history. The rocks shift from white to orange to deep red as you walk, each color representing a different geological era. Durdle Door, that famous natural limestone arch reaching into turquoise water, is one of those landmarks that stops you in your tracks no matter how many photographs you have seen of it before. The real thing is always more impressive. Keep going west and you reach Cornwall, and Cornwall is something else entirely. Rugged cliffs, hidden coves, fishing villages clinging to steep hillsides, turquoise waters that you genuinely cannot believe are in England. Places like St. Ives with its white sand beaches and artist studios, or Tintagel where the ruins of a castle sit perched on a cliff edge surrounded by legend and sea spray. Cornwall is where King Arthur supposedly held court, and when you stand on those cliffs watching the Atlantic thunder against the rocks below, you understand why people believed in legends here. The landscape demands myth. And speaking of history, let me talk about the thing England does better than almost anywhere else on the planet: preserving it. Well, this country is layered with history like geological strata. Every town, every village, every city has stories embedded in its stones. And unlike many places where ancient history has been paved over or torn down, England has kept extraordinary amounts of it intact and accessible. Start with Stonehenge, obviously. Whatever you think about Stonehenge before you see it, nothing quite prepares you for the real thing. Those massive stones standing in a circle on Salisbury Plain, placed there roughly 5,000 years ago by people we still do not fully understand. The mystery of it is part of the power. How did they move stones weighing 25 tons from Wales over 150 miles away without wheels or metal tools? Why did they arrange them to align with the solstice sun? What ceremonies took place within that circle? We have theories, but the truth is buried in deep time. And standing there, watching the shadows shift across those ancient pillars, you feel genuinely humbled by the depth of human history on this ground. But Stonehenge is just the most famous example. England is dotted with prehistoric monuments, Roman ruins, medieval castles, and Tudor mansions. The Roman baths in the city of Bath give you a window into life 2,000 years ago, when the Romans built an elaborate bathing complex around natural hot springs. You can still see the original lead-lined pool, still filled with steaming water, surrounded by columns and statues and engineering that makes you wonder how a civilization this advanced could ever have fallen. Bath itself deserves its own moment. The city is a masterpiece of Georgian architecture, all pale golden stone crescents and terraces cascading down green hillsides. The Royal Crescent, a sweeping arc of 30 townhouses, is one of the most photographed buildings in England for good reason. The entire city has a harmony to it, a sense of proportion and elegance that makes you want to walk slowly and absorb every detail. Jane Austen lived here and set two of her novels here, and the city has barely changed since her time in terms of its essential character. Now from Bath, let me take you to somewhere that embodies a completely different kind of English beauty. York. This northern city is surrounded by medieval walls you can actually walk along, giving you an elevated view of a city that has been continuously inhabited for nearly 2,000 years. At its heart stands York Minster, one of the largest Gothic cathedrals in northern Europe. The scale of it is almost incomprehensible. It took over 250 years to build, and every inch of it reflects the ambition and devotion of the people who created it. The stained glass windows alone, particularly the Great East Window, are among the finest medieval artworks in existence. But York is not just about the minster. The Shambles, a narrow medieval street with timber frame buildings leaning so close together they nearly touch overhead, is often called the best preserved medieval street in Europe. Walking down it feels like stepping into a different century. And the city's Viking heritage, explored brilliantly in the Jorvik Center, adds yet another layer to a place where history is not something you read about in books. It is something you walk through every single day. Let me shift now to something that catches a lot of visitors off guard. The sheer variety of landscapes within England. This is not a big country. You can drive from the southern coast to the northern border in about 6 hours. But in that relatively short distance, you pass through an astonishing range of terrain. The Peak District, sitting in the heart of the country, offers wild moorlands, dramatic limestone dales, and some of the best hiking in England. Stanage Edge, a gritstone escarpment that stretches for miles, is the kind of place that makes you feel wonderfully small. Below it, valleys dotted with stone villages and crossed by ancient packhorse bridges look like they have not changed in centuries. The Yorkshire Dales further north are equally stunning, but with a character all their own. Wide open valleys flanked by limestone scars, punctuated by waterfalls and crossed by dry stone walls that pattern the landscape like a giant quilt. Malham Cove, a curved cliff of limestone pavement formed by glacial meltwater thousands of years ago, is one of those natural formations that makes you stop and stare and try to wrap your mind around the forces that created it. And then there is Northumberland, the wildest and least populated county in England. Vast empty beaches, dark sky reserves where you can see the Milky Way with the naked eye, and the remains of Hadrian's Wall, built by the Roman Emperor Hadrian nearly 2,000 years ago to mark the northern limit of the Roman Empire. Walking along that wall, with the wind tearing across the crags and not another person in sight, is one of the most evocative experiences England offers. You are literally tracing the boundary of one of the greatest civilizations in human history. Now I have to talk about the cities, because English cities are something special. London gets most of the attention, and deservedly so. It is one of the great cities of the world. But I want to go beyond the tourist highlights for a moment. Yes, the Tower of London is incredible. Yes, Buckingham Palace and Westminster Abbey and the Houses of Parliament are magnificent. But London's real magic is in its neighborhoods. Walk through Hampstead Heath on a Sunday morning and you will find yourself in a landscape that feels more like countryside than city, with views across the entire London skyline from Parliament Hill. Explore the street markets of Portobello Road or Borough Market, and you will taste the multicultural heartbeat of a city that has absorbed influences from every corner of the globe. Sit in one of the ancient pubs in the City of London, where the walls are darkened by centuries of smoke and conversation, and you will feel connected to a tradition of gathering and storytelling that goes back generations beyond count. But beyond London, cities like Oxford and Cambridge offer something no other country can quite match. These university cities, with their ancient colleges built around quiet courtyards, their libraries holding manuscripts that predate the printing press, their traditions that stretch back to the 13th century, represent a concentration of intellectual and architectural heritage that is genuinely staggering. Walking through the Bodleian Library in Oxford or across the Bridge of Sighs in Cambridge, you are walking through spaces where some of the most important ideas in human history were born and debated and refined. Then there is Durham, with its cathedral and castle perched on a rocky peninsula above a river bend, a sight so dramatic it looks like it was designed by a movie director rather than medieval monks. There is Bristol, vibrant and colorful, with Brunel's suspension bridge spanning a gorge that would be impressive even without a Victorian engineering masterpiece draped across it. There is Liverpool, with its waterfront architecture and musical heritage, and the kind of warmth and humor in its people that makes you feel welcome from the very first conversation. Let me circle back to something I mentioned earlier, because I think it deserves more attention. The English Garden. Now, I know that might sound like a minor thing compared to castles and coastlines, but hear me out. The English Garden is one of the country's great art forms, and it is everywhere. From the grand landscapes of Capability Brown at places like Blenheim Palace and Chatsworth House to the cottage gardens bursting with color in tiny villages, England has elevated gardening to something that borders on the spiritual. The gardens at Sissinghurst in Kent, created by Vita Sackville West, are a masterclass in using plants to create rooms of color and texture and mood. The gardens at Great Dixter in Sussex, championed by Christopher Lloyd, showed that gardens could be wild and exuberant and rule-breaking while still being beautiful. And the Royal Botanic Gardens at Kew in London contain one of the largest collections of living plants on Earth, housed in glass houses that are architectural wonders in their own right. There is something about the English relationship with gardens that reflects something deep in the national character. This idea that beauty is worth cultivating, that patience and care and attention to detail can transform even a small patch of ground into something extraordinary. When you walk through an English garden in full bloom with bees humming through the lavender and butterflies drifting between the foxgloves, you understand that this is not just horticulture. This is an expression of a culture that believes in making things beautiful. Now I want to take you somewhere unexpected. The English countryside at night. Because England has some of the darkest skies in Europe, particularly in the north. Northumberland International Dark Sky Park is one of the largest areas of protected dark sky in Europe, and on a clear night, the view is life-changing. The Milky Way stretches from horizon to horizon, stars upon stars upon stars, more than you believed possible. In a world increasingly flooded with artificial light, these dark skies are a treasure beyond measure. But even outside the designated dark sky areas, the English countryside at night has a quality to it that is profoundly peaceful. Owls calling across moonlit fields, the distant sound of a river, the silhouette of a church spire against a star-filled sky. These are the moments that do not make it onto postcards, but that stay with you long after the trip is over. Let me talk about something else that makes England special as a travel destination. Accessibility. Unlike many countries where the greatest wonders require days of travel to reach, England puts its treasures remarkably close together. You can visit Stonehenge in the morning, explore Bath in the afternoon, and be in the Cotswolds for dinner. You can take a train from London to York in under 2 hours, from York to the Lake District in another 90 minutes. The country's size, which might seem like a limitation, is actually one of its greatest strengths as a travel destination. Everything is within reach. And the infrastructure for exploring is superb. Thousands of miles of public footpaths crisscross the country, many of them ancient routes that have been walked for centuries. The right to roam across open land means that the landscape is genuinely open to everyone. National Trust properties, English heritage sites, and countless local museums and galleries make the country's history and culture accessible in a way that few nations manage. The food scene also deserves mention, because England has undergone a quiet revolution in the last 2 decades. Gone are the days when English food was a punchline. Today, the country has some of the best restaurants in the world. From Michelin-starred dining rooms to street food markets to gastropubs serving elevated versions of classic dishes. A proper Sunday roast in a country pub with perfectly roasted meat and Yorkshire puddings and all the trimmings is one of life's great pleasures. Fresh fish and chips eaten on a harbor wall with seagulls circling overhead is another. And the cream teas, scones with clotted cream and jam served with a pot of tea are worth the trip alone. I want to finish by talking about something intangible but absolutely essential to understanding what makes England wonderful. It is the atmosphere, the feeling you get when you are there. England has a particular quality of light, especially in the late afternoon when the sun sits low and everything turns golden. The English light has a softness to it, a warmth that makes landscapes glow and buildings seem to radiate from within. Turner painted it, Constable painted it, every landscape photographer who visits falls in love with it. And then there is the sound of England. Church bells on a Sunday morning, rain on a pub window, birdsong in a country lane at dawn, the crunch of gravel under your feet as you walk up the drive to a stately home. These sounds form a soundtrack that is unmistakably English, and they contribute to an atmosphere that is at once peaceful and deeply stimulating. There is also the people. The English reputation for reserve hides a warmth and a wit that reveals itself the moment you step into a local pub or strike up a conversation at a bus stop. The humor is dry and self-deprecating. The hospitality is genuine even when it is understated. And the pride in local places, local traditions, and local history is palpable everywhere you go. Ask someone in the Lake District about their favorite walk, and you will get a 30-minute conversation filled with passion and detail. Ask someone in Cornwall about the best beach and prepare for a spirited debate. Greece is one of those places that ruins you for everywhere else. I know that sounds dramatic, but hear me out. Once you have walked through ruins that are older than most civilizations, once you have seen a sunset paint the Aegean Sea in colors you did not think were real, once you have tasted food that makes you question every meal you have eaten before, something shifts inside you. You do not come back the same person. And today, I am going to show you exactly why. Now, before we dive in, I want you to imagine something. Imagine standing on a cliff edge. Below you, the sea is so impossibly blue it looks like someone poured sapphire ink into the Mediterranean. Behind you, white buildings cascade down a hillside like a frozen waterfall. The air smells like wild thyme and salt. A church bell rings somewhere in the distance. That is not a painting. That is not a screensaver. That is just a random Tuesday in Greece. This country has been calling to travelers for thousands of years. Literally thousands. The ancient Greeks invented the concept of sacred travel. Pilgrims would journey across the known world to visit the oracle at Delphi or compete in the original Olympic Games. Tourism is not some modern invention here. It is woven into the very fabric of what Greece is. And when you visit, you become part of a tradition that stretches back to the dawn of Western civilization. So let me take you on a journey. We are going to start where every story about Greece has to start. Athens. You cannot understand Greece without understanding Athens. This is the city where democracy was born, where philosophy was invented, where theater, mathematics, and medicine took their first shaky steps into existence. When you walk through the streets of Athens, you are walking on the same ground where Socrates argued with strangers and Aristotle taught Alexander the Great. That is not a metaphor. That is literally true. And towering above it all is the Acropolis. Now, you have seen pictures of the Parthenon, everyone has, but nothing prepares you for seeing it in person. When you climb that hill and the temple comes into full view, something happens in your chest. It is this overwhelming sense of time collapsing. This building was already ancient when Julius Caesar was alive. It was already 1,000 years old when the Roman Empire fell. And here it stands, battered and incomplete, but still breathtakingly beautiful, still commanding the skyline of a modern city of 4 million people. The best time to visit the Acropolis is early morning, right when it opens. You beat the crowds and the heat, and the light is absolutely perfect for photographs. That golden Mediterranean morning light hitting those marble columns is something you will remember for the rest of your life. But Athens is not just the Acropolis. Wander into the Plaka neighborhood, the oldest continuously inhabited area in the city. Narrow streets twist between neoclassical buildings draped in bougainvillea. Little cafes spill out onto cobblestone paths. You can sit there with a Greek coffee, which is strong enough to wake up your ancestors, by the way, and just watch the world go by. Street musicians play. Cats lounge in doorways. Old men argue about politics at tiny tables. It feels like stepping into a living, breathing postcard. Then there is the food. Oh, the food in Athens. Fresh grilled octopus with a squeeze of lemon. Spanakopita straight from the oven, the phyllo dough shattering at the slightest touch. Souvlaki from street vendors that somehow taste better than any expensive restaurant meal you have ever had. And the olive oil. Greek olive oil is on another level entirely. They drizzle it on everything, and honestly, they are right to do so. Now, from Athens, most travelers make their way to the islands, and this is where Greece transforms from impressive to absolutely magical. Let me talk about Santorini first, because it is the one everyone thinks of. And yes, it lives up to the hype. Completely, Santorini is actually the rim of an ancient volcanic caldera. The entire island is essentially the edge of a massive crater that filled with seawater after one of the largest volcanic eruptions in recorded history, roughly 3,500 years ago. Some historians believe this eruption may have contributed to the collapse of the Minoan civilization and could even be connected to the legend of Atlantis. So when you are standing in the village of Oya, watching the sunset, you are standing on the edge of a geological catastrophe that may have inspired one of the most enduring myths in human history. If that does not give you chills, I do not know what will. The architecture of Santorini is iconic for good reason. Those white cubic buildings with blue domed roofs were not designed by some trendy architect. They evolved out of practicality. The white paint reflects the brutal summer heat. The cave houses carved into the cliff face stay cool naturally. The blue domes mark the many small churches scattered across the island. Beauty born from necessity. There is something profoundly Greek about that. Santorini is also a wine lover's paradise. The volcanic soil produces grapes you cannot find anywhere else in the world. The Assyrtiko grape in particular thrives here, producing crisp white wines with an almost mineral quality that pairs perfectly with fresh seafood. Visit a winery perched on the caldera rim, taste a glass of Assyrtiko while overlooking the sea. And tell me that is not one of the finest moments a human being can experience. But I want to let you in on something. As stunning as Santorini is, the real magic of Greek islands often lies in the lesser-known ones. Take Milos, for example. This island in the Cyclades has some of the most extraordinary beaches you will ever see. We are talking about Sarykiniko, a lunar landscape of smooth white volcanic rock sculpted by wind and waves into surreal shapes that look like they belong on another planet. The contrast between the bright white stone and the deep turquoise water is almost hallucinogenic, and unlike some of the more famous spots, you can often have stretches of these beaches mostly to yourself, especially if you visit in the shoulder season of May or early October. Or consider Naxos, the largest of the Cycladic islands. Naxos has everything: beautiful beaches, ancient ruins, mountain villages, incredible local cheese and potatoes that are famous throughout Greece. There is a massive marble gateway called the Portera, standing alone on a peninsula, the unfinished entrance to a temple of Apollo that was never completed. At sunset, you can frame the entire harbor through this ancient doorway. It is one of the most photographed spots in all of Greece, and for very good reason. Then there is Crete, which honestly deserves an entire video of its own. Crete is the largest Greek island, and it feels almost like its own country. The Cretans have a fierce independence and a culture that runs deep. This is where the Minoan civilization flourished over 4,000 years ago, making it one of the oldest centers of advanced civilization in Europe. Visit the Palace of Knossos, and you are walking through what many consider to be the birthplace of European culture. The Minoans had running water, multi-story buildings, and elaborate art centuries before mainland Greece reached similar levels of sophistication. The famous legend of the Minotaur and the Labyrinth is connected to this very place, and when you see the maze-like layout of the palace ruins, you can understand how that myth might have been born. But Crete is not all ancient history. The Samaria Gorge is one of the longest gorges in Europe, a 16-kilometer hike through towering canyon walls that narrow to just 4 meters wide at certain points. It is challenging and exhausting and absolutely magnificent. The gorge empties out at a small coastal village where you can collapse into a taverna, order fresh fish and a cold beer, and feel like you have genuinely earned it. The cuisine of Crete deserves special mention. The Cretan diet is considered one of the healthiest in the world. It centers around olive oil, wild greens, fresh vegetables, legumes, and moderate amounts of cheese, meat, and wine. Researchers have studied Cretan villages for decades, trying to understand why the people there live so remarkably long. The answer seems to be a combination of diet, physical activity, strong social bonds, and perhaps some genetic luck. But whatever the reason, eating in Crete feels like nourishing your soul as much as your body. Now let me shift gears and take you somewhere completely different. The mainland of Greece holds wonders that many visitors miss entirely because they rush straight to the islands. Meteora is one of the most jaw-dropping places on Earth. Full stop. Massive natural stone pillars rise hundreds of meters from the ground, and perched on top of these impossible columns of rock are medieval monasteries that look like they were placed there by the hand of God. The monks who built these retreats in the 14th century were seeking isolation and closeness to the divine, and you can see why they chose this spot. The landscape does not feel like it belongs in Europe. It feels like something from a fantasy novel. 6 of the original 24 monasteries are still standing and open to visitors. To reach them, you climb steep staircases carved into the rock face. Inside, you find centuries-old frescoes, quiet courtyards, and an almost overwhelming sense of peace. The monks who live here still maintain a contemplative existence, and there is something about the energy of these places that quiets even the most restless mind. I have to tell you about Delphi as well. In the ancient world, Delphi was considered the center of the universe. The Greeks called it the navel of the world. People traveled from across the Mediterranean to consult the oracle, a priestess who supposedly channeled the god Apollo to deliver prophecies. Kings and generals made no major decisions without first seeking the oracle's guidance. Today, the archaeological site of Delphi sits on the slopes of Mount Parnassus, surrounded by olive groves and dramatic mountain scenery. The ruins include the Temple of Apollo, an ancient theater, and a stadium where the Pythian Games were held. Walking along the sacred way, the path that ancient pilgrims followed up to the temple, you can almost feel the weight of the countless prayers and hopes that were carried along this road over the centuries. The museum at Delphi houses one of the most famous sculptures in the world, the Charioteer of Delphi, a bronze statue from around 470 BC, that is so lifelike and so perfectly preserved that it takes your breath away. The eyes are made of inlaid stone and glass, and they seem to look right through you across 25 centuries. Let me bring you to the Peloponnese next. This peninsula, connected to mainland Greece by a narrow land bridge, is absolutely packed with historical treasures. The ancient city of Mycenae, home of the legendary King Agamemnon, who led the Greek forces in the Trojan War, sits brooding on a hilltop. You enter through the Lion Gate, one of the oldest monumental sculptures in Europe, and inside the citadel walls you can see the royal burial circles where golden death masks were discovered in the 19th century. When the archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann found one particularly stunning mask, he reportedly telegraphed the king of Greece saying, "I have gazed upon the face of Agamemnon." Whether that mask actually belonged to Agamemnon is debatable, but the drama of the moment is pure Greece. The ancient theater of Epidaurus in the Peloponnese is another marvel. Built in the 4th century BC, it seats 14,000 people and has acoustics so perfect that a person whispering on stage can be heard clearly in the very last row. No microphones, no speakers, just ingenious architecture that we still do not fully understand. Performances are still held here during the summer months, and attending a Greek tragedy in this setting, under the stars, in a theater built specifically for this purpose over 2,000 years ago, is one of the most moving cultural experiences available anywhere on the planet. And I have to mention Olympia. This is where it all started. The original Olympic Games were held here beginning in 776 BC and continued for over 1,000 years. Athletes from across the Greek world would compete in running, wrestling, chariot racing, and other events. Wars would be paused so that competitors could travel safely, and the games were that important. Walking through the ruins of ancient Olympia, you can see the remains of the gymnasium where athletes trained, the temple of Zeus that once housed one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, and the original running track where the very first Olympic foot race was held. If you stand at the starting line and look down that track, knowing that countless athletes stood in this exact spot, striving for glory nearly 3,000 years ago, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. Now I want to talk about something that does not get enough attention when people discuss Greece. The people themselves. Greeks are some of the most hospitable people you will ever meet. There is a word in Greek, philoxenia, which literally translates to love of strangers. It is not just a concept, it is a deeply held cultural value. In ancient Greece, hospitality was considered sacred, a divine obligation. Zeus himself was the protector of travelers and guests. And that tradition is not faded. If you visit a small village in Greece and sit in a taverna, there is a very real chance someone will send a plate of food to your table or insist on buying you a drink. If you ask for directions, a local might walk you all the way to your destination rather than just pointing. In rural areas especially, being welcoming to visitors is not just politeness, it is a point of honor. I remember reading about a traveler who got lost in a mountain village and an elderly woman invited him into her home, fed him a full meal, gave him directions drawn on a napkin, and refused to accept any payment. She said it would bring shame on her house to take money from a guest. That story captures something essential about the Greek character. The pace of life in Greece is also something worth noting. Greeks have a relationship with time that feels fundamentally different from what most of us are used to. Meals are long, conversations are unhurried, the afternoon rest is still observed in many places. Coffee is not something you grab on the run. It is something you sit with for an hour while watching the world. There is a wisdom in this approach to living that many of us in faster-paced societies have lost. Greece can help you find it again if you let it. Let me come back to the natural beauty because I have not done it justice yet. Greece has over 6,000 islands and islets, though only about 200 are inhabited. The coastline stretches for roughly 16,000 kilometers, which is extraordinary for a country its size. This means beaches. Endless, glorious, wildly varied beaches. You have the pink sand beach of Elefsonisi in Crete, where the sand literally glows rose-colored in the sunlight. You have Navaggio Beach on Zakynthos, the famous shipwreck beach enclosed by towering limestone cliffs that you have definitely seen in photographs, even if you did not know its name. You have the hidden coves of Kefalonia, the black volcanic beaches of Santorini, the long sandy stretches of Rhodes, and countless unnamed little patches of paradise that you stumble upon when you rent a boat and just explore. The water clarity in Greece is remarkable. In many places, you can see straight to the bottom, even in water that is 10 or 15 meters deep. Snorkeling and diving are extraordinary throughout the islands. Underwater caves, ancient shipwrecks, colorful marine life, and visibility that stretches on and on. The Mediterranean has been overfished in many areas, but Greece still has pockets of genuine marine abundance, particularly around some of the more remote islands. And then there are the mountains. People forget that Greece is one of the most mountainous countries in Europe. Mount Olympus, the legendary home of the gods, rises to nearly 3,000 meters. You can actually hike to the summit, and the trek takes you through dense forests, alpine meadows, and exposed rocky ridges. Standing on the peak where the ancient Greeks believed Zeus held court, looking out over a sea of clouds, is a spiritual experience regardless of your beliefs. The Vikos Gorge in northwestern Greece is another natural wonder that often gets overlooked. Listed in the Guinness Book of Records at one point as the deepest gorge in the world relative to its width, it cuts through the Zagori region, an area of stunning stone villages, arched bridges, and forested mountains that feels untouched by the modern world. I should talk about the seasons because when you visit Greece matters enormously. Summer is the obvious choice and the most popular, but July and August bring intense heat and massive crowds, especially on the famous islands. Prices peak and so do temperatures, regularly exceeding 35 degrees Celsius. The shoulder seasons are where the real magic happens. Late April through June and September through mid-October offer warm weather, manageable crowds, lower prices, and seas that are still perfectly swimmable, especially in the fall. Spring brings wildflowers that carpet the hillsides in color. Autumn brings the grape harvest and some of the most stunning light you will ever photograph. Even winter has its charms. Athens and the mainland destinations are far less crowded, and you can experience a side of Greece that most tourists never see. Mountain villages dusted in snow, cozy tavernas with roaring fires, ski resorts on the slopes of Parnassus or Olympus. It is a different Greece entirely, but no less beautiful. Australia is home to some of the most jaw-dropping landscapes on the entire planet, and I guarantee that by the end of this video, you're going to be adding at least 3 new destinations to your bucket list. We are talking about places so stunning, so otherworldly, that they genuinely look like they belong on another planet. Places where the ocean glows electric blue at night, where ancient rock formations tell stories that stretch back billions of years, and where forests so old they predate the dinosaurs still stand today. This is not your typical travel video. We are going deep into the heart of Australia to uncover wonders that most people never even hear about, alongside the iconic landmarks that continue to leave millions of visitors completely speechless year after year. Now, before we dive in, I want you to picture something. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff, looking out over a landscape that stretches so far into the distance that the curvature of the earth starts to become visible. The air is warm. The sky is painted in shades of orange and deep purple as the sun dips below the horizon. And in front of you, ancient red rock formations glow as if they are lit from within. That is not a fantasy. That is a Tuesday evening in certain parts of Australia. This country is absolutely massive. We are talking about a landmass nearly as large as the continental United States, but with a population of only around 26 million people. That means vast stretches of this country remain wild, untouched, and breathtakingly beautiful. Let us start our journey in a place that needs no introduction but deserves one anyway. The Great Barrier Reef, stretching over 2,300 kilometers along the northeast coast of Queensland, this is the largest living structure on Earth. And yes, you heard that correctly, it is alive. The Great Barrier Reef is made up of nearly 3,000 individual reef systems and hundreds of islands. It is so enormous that it can be seen from outer space. When you dive beneath the surface of these waters, you enter a world that feels completely separate from everything above. The colors are extraordinary. Corals in every shade imaginable create an underwater cityscape that is home to over 1,500 species of fish, 4,000 types of mollusk, and around 200 species of birds on the islands above. Swimming through the Great Barrier Reef is like floating through a living painting. Schools of fish move in synchronized patterns that seem choreographed. Sea turtles glide past with an elegance that makes you forget how ancient these creatures truly are. And if you are lucky, you might spot a reef shark patrolling the edges of the coral formations. The sheer scale of life here is humbling. Every square meter of reef is teeming with activity, with creatures big and small going about their daily routines in ways that remind you just how incredible the natural world really is. But the reef also tells a more complex story. Rising ocean temperatures have led to coral bleaching events that have affected significant portions of this ecosystem. Conservation efforts are ongoing, and visiting the reef responsibly is more important now than ever before. When you go, choose operators who prioritize sustainability. Your visit can actually contribute to the preservation of this wonder rather than its decline. Now let us travel inland, deep into the red center of Australia, to encounter one of the most sacred and visually striking natural monuments on Earth. Uluru. Rising 348 meters above the surrounding flat desert landscape, this massive sandstone monolith is truly a sight that stops you in your tracks. What makes Uluru particularly magical is how it transforms throughout the day. In the early morning light, it appears as a deep shade of purple. As the sun climbs higher, it shifts to burnt orange. And at sunset, it blazes with a fiery red intensity that photographs simply cannot capture. You have to be there. You have to feel the heat radiating off the rock and watch the colors shift in real time to truly understand why this place has been sacred to the Anangu people for tens of thousands of years. The cultural significance of Uluru cannot be overstated. This is not just a rock formation, it is a living cultural landscape with deep spiritual meaning. The Anangu people have been the traditional custodians of this land for over 30,000 years, and their connection to Uluru is woven into creation stories and cultural practices that continue to this day. Since October 2019, climbing Uluru has been permanently closed out of respect for its cultural significance, and honestly, experiencing it from the ground is more than enough to leave you completely awestruck. Surrounding Uluru, the landscape of the Red Center offers its own wonders. Kata Tjuta, also known as the Olgas, is a formation of 36 domed rock structures that rise up from the desert floor just 25 kilometers from Uluru. In many ways, Kata Tjuta is even more impressive up close. Walking through the Valley of the Winds trail takes you between towering rock domes that create natural amphitheaters and wind tunnels. The silence between these formations is profound. It is the kind of quiet that makes you aware of your own heartbeat. Let us shift gears dramatically now and head to the coast. Specifically, the Great Ocean Road in Victoria. This 243-kilometer stretch of road along Australia's southeastern coast is regularly listed among the most scenic drives in the world, and for very good reason. The star attraction here is the collection of limestone stacks known as the 12 Apostles, though only 8 remain standing today. These towering pillars of rock rise up to 45 meters from the Southern Ocean, carved over millions of years by the relentless power of wind and waves. Standing at the viewing platform and watching the ocean crash against these formations is a reminder of just how powerful and patient nature truly is. But the Great Ocean Road offers so much more than just the 12 Apostles. There is Loch Ard Gorge, named after a ship that tragically wrecked here in 1878. The gorge itself is stunning, with towering cliffs framing a narrow inlet of turquoise water. There is London Arch, which was originally a double-arched formation connected to the mainland until one of the arches collapsed in 1990, dramatically transforming the structure while 2 tourists were standing on it. They had to be rescued by helicopter. The entire coastline tells stories of shipwrecks and geological drama that span millions of years. Now I want to take you somewhere that most international visitors overlook entirely, and that is Tasmania. This island state off the southern coast of mainland Australia is genuinely one of the most beautiful places I have ever encountered. Nearly 40% of Tasmania is protected in national parks and reserves, and the wilderness here is ancient, pristine, and utterly captivating. Cradle Mountain in the island's northwest is perhaps the most photographed location in Tasmania, and one look at it tells you why. The jagged peak of the mountain reflects perfectly in the still waters of Dove Lake below, creating a mirror image that looks almost too perfect to be real. But Tasmania's wonders extend far beyond Cradle Mountain. The Tarkine rainforest in the northwest is one of the largest tracts of temperate rainforest remaining in the world. Walking through it feels like stepping back in time. The trees here are hundreds, and in some cases thousands of years old. Moss covers every surface. The air is thick with moisture and the scent of eucalyptus and huon pine. Freycinet National Park on the east coast is home to Wineglass Bay, consistently ranked among the top 10 beaches in the world. The hike to the lookout point reveals a perfectly curved bay of white sand backed by pink granite mountains, with water so clear and blue it looks tropical despite being anything but. Let us head north now, way up to the tropical top of Australia, to a place called the Daintree Rainforest. This is the oldest continually surviving tropical rainforest on Earth. We are talking about a forest that has existed for over 135 million years. That means this forest was already ancient when dinosaurs still roamed the planet. The biodiversity here is staggering. Within the Daintree, you will find more species of plants and animals per square kilometer than almost anywhere else on the globe. Rare and unusual creatures like the southern cassowary, a large flightless bird that looks like something straight out of the prehistoric era, still roam these forests. What makes the Daintree even more remarkable is where it meets the sea. This is one of the only places on Earth where two World Heritage Sites meet, as the Daintree rainforest stretches right down to the edge of the Great Barrier Reef. The collision of dense tropical jungle and coral reef coastline creates a landscape unlike anything else. You can literally go from exploring ancient rainforests to snorkeling over coral reefs within the same morning. Speaking of unique natural phenomena, let me tell you about something that sounds almost impossible. The bioluminescent waters of Jervis Bay in New South Wales. On certain nights, when conditions are right, the water here glows an electric blue. This ethereal light is produced by tiny organisms called dinoflagellates that emit light when disturbed. Walking along the shore and watching your footprints glow blue in the sand, or watching waves crash and illuminate the entire waterline with an otherworldly blue light, is genuinely one of the most magical experiences the natural world can offer. It feels like something out of a science fiction film, but it is completely real and it happens regularly along parts of the Australian coast. Now let us talk about a place that redefines what you think a lake can look like. Lake Hillier in Western Australia is a lake that is bright pink, not a subtle pink, not a pinkish hue depending on the light. This lake is bubblegum pink all day, every day, regardless of the weather or time of year. It sits on Middle Island, the largest of the islands in the Recherche archipelago, and it is surrounded by a rim of sand and dense eucalyptus forest that contrasts dramatically with the vivid pink water. From above, the sight of this hot pink lake sitting next to the deep blue of the Southern Ocean is absolutely surreal. Scientists believe the pink color comes from a combination of algae and bacteria, but the exact mechanism is still not fully understood. The water retains its pink color even when you scoop it up in a container, which makes it unlike many other pink lakes around the world where the color is only visible from a distance. We have covered reefs and deserts and rainforests and coastlines, but Australia's wonders include some extraordinary geological formations that deserve attention too. The Pinnacles Desert in Nambung National Park, Western Australia, is a landscape that looks like it belongs on Mars. Thousands of limestone pillars rise from yellow sand dunes, some reaching up to 5 meters tall. These formations were created over millions of years as limestone deposits formed around plant roots, which eventually decayed and left behind these haunting spires. Walking through the pinnacles at sunset, when the golden light casts long shadows between the formations and the sky turns deep orange behind them, is an experience that makes you question whether you have somehow left Earth entirely. And then there is the Blue Mountains, just 90 kilometers west of Sydney. Despite their proximity to Australia's largest city, the Blue Mountains feel like a completely different world. The characteristic blue haze that gives the mountains their name comes from the fine mist of oil released by the vast eucalyptus forests that cover the landscape. This creates a dreamy, almost mystical atmosphere that blankets the deep valleys and towering sandstone cliffs. The Three Sisters Rock Formation is the most famous viewpoint, and standing at Echo Point looking out over the Jameson Valley is genuinely one of those moments where you understand why human beings have always been drawn to high places. The sense of scale is incredible. Waterfalls cascade down cliff faces hundreds of meters high. Dense forest fills the valley floor so completely that it looks like a green ocean stretching to the horizon. Let me take you now to a place that surprises even many Australians. The Bungle Bungle Range in Purnululu National Park, Western Australia. These beehive-shaped sandstone domes, striped with alternating bands of orange and dark gray, look like something designed by an artist rather than formed by nature. The orange bands are created by iron and manganese deposits, while the darker bands contain cyanobacteria. The formations are over 350 million years old, yet they were not widely known to the outside world until the 1980s. The traditional custodians, the Kija and Jaru people, have known about and cared for this landscape for over 20,000 years. Walking through Cathedral Gorge within the range, a natural amphitheater formed by erosion, the acoustics are extraordinary. Even a whisper carries and echoes in ways that feel almost supernatural. Australia's coastline stretches for over 34,000 kilometers, and scattered along it are beaches that consistently rank among the most beautiful in the world. Whitehaven Beach in the Whitsunday Islands is perhaps the most famous. The sand here is 98% pure silica, giving it a brilliant white appearance and a texture so fine it feels like powder between your fingers. The swirling patterns of white sand and turquoise water at Hill Inlet, visible from an elevated lookout point, create abstract patterns that shift with every tide. These natural designs are so visually striking that they look digitally enhanced in photographs, but in person they are even more impressive. Cable Beach in Broome, Western Australia stretches for 22 kilometers and is famous for its spectacular sunsets over the Indian Ocean. Watching the sun sink below the horizon while riding a camel along the flat, wet sand is one of those quintessentially Australian experiences that combines natural beauty with a touch of the surreal. Now here is something that might surprise you. Australia is home to some genuinely remarkable cave systems. The Jenolan Caves in New South Wales are estimated to be around 340 million years old, making them among the oldest discovered open caves in the world. Inside, you will find extraordinary limestone formations including stalactites, stalagmites, columns, and crystal-clear underground rivers. The caves are illuminated to showcase these formations, and the effect is otherworldly. Each chamber reveals new shapes and textures that have been slowly built by dripping water over incomprehensible timescales. Let us not forget the wildlife that makes Australia so unique. This country's geographic isolation has produced an incredible array of animals found nowhere else on Earth. Kangaroos bounding across open grasslands at dawn, koalas sleeping peacefully in eucalyptus trees, platypuses swimming in freshwater streams still baffling scientists with their bizarre combination of features, wombats waddling through forests at dusk. And in the waters surrounding Australia, humpback whales migrate along the coast each year, providing spectacular displays of breaching and tail slapping that draw crowds to vantage points up and down the coastline. Kangaroo Island, off the coast of South Australia, is one of the best places to experience Australian wildlife in its natural habitat. Sea lions laze on pristine beaches. Koalas populate almost every eucalyptus tree you pass. Echidnas waddle along forest paths. And the remarkable rocks, a collection of naturally sculpted granite boulders perched on a smooth granite dome overlooking the Southern Ocean, provide one of the most photogenic natural landmarks in the entire country. These rocks have been shaped by wind, rain, and sea spray over 500 million years into abstract forms that look like they were carved by a giant sculptor. The Kimberley region in Western Australia is one of the last true wilderness frontiers on Earth. Covering an area of over 400,000 square kilometers, it is roughly 3 times the size of England, but home to fewer than 40,000 people. The landscape here is ancient and dramatic. Horizontal falls, where massive tidal movements force water through narrow gorges, creating a waterfall that flows sideways, is a phenomenon unique to this region. The Mitchell Falls cascade over several tiers surrounded by lush monsoon vine forest and ancient Aboriginal rock art. King George Falls, the highest twin falls in Western Australia, plunge over 80 meters directly into the ocean. The entire Kimberley coast is studded with thousands of islands, hidden bays, and dramatic cliff faces that most of the world has never seen, and we cannot talk about the wonders of Australia without mentioning the night sky. Due to the vast uninhabited areas with virtually zero light pollution, Australia offers some of the best stargazing opportunities on the planet. In the outback, far from any town or city, the Milky Way stretches across the sky with such clarity and brilliance that it casts visible shadows on the ground below. The Southern Cross constellation featured on the Australian flag is visible year-round from most parts of the country. And during certain times of the year, the Southern Lights, Aurora Australis, can be seen from Tasmania, painting the southern sky with ethereal curtains of green, purple, and red light. What strikes me most about Australia is the sheer diversity of landscapes contained within a single country. You can go from snorkeling on tropical reefs to hiking through ancient rainforests to standing in vast red deserts to exploring pristine white sand beaches to walking through cool temperate forests all within days. The distances are enormous, yes, but that is part of the adventure. The driving between destinations takes you through landscapes that gradually transform, telling geological stories that span billions of years. The indigenous Australian people, the oldest continuous culture on Earth with a history stretching back at least 65,000 years, have shaped and cared for these landscapes in ways that are only now beginning to be understood and appreciated by the wider world. Their knowledge of the land, encoded in stories, songs, and art, represents an unbroken connection to these places that predates every other human civilization. Experiencing Australia's wonders with an understanding of this cultural depth adds layers of meaning to every landscape you encounter. India is one of those places that will break your brain in the best possible way. I mean that seriously. There is no country on earth quite like it. And today, I'm going to take you on a journey across this extraordinary land, from snow-capped mountains in the north to tropical beaches in the south, from ancient temples that are older than most civilizations to modern cities pulsing with energy and ambition. By the end of this video, you are either going to book a flight to India or you are going to sit there wondering why you have not already gone. Either way, your perspective on travel is about to change forever. Before we dive in, I want to set something straight. Most people think they know India. They have seen a Bollywood movie, maybe eaten at an Indian restaurant, maybe scrolled past a photo of the Taj Mahal on Instagram. But that surface-level impression does not even begin to scratch what this country actually is. India is a universe compressed into a single nation. It has 28 states, 8 union territories, over 2,000 ethnic groups, and more than 19,000 languages and dialects. Let me say that again. 19,000. This is not a country you visit once and understand. This is a country that invites you back 100 times and still has secrets to share. So let us start this journey and see what makes India one of the greatest wonders on the planet. We are beginning in the north, and there is really only one place to start. The Himalayas. Now, you have probably seen pictures of the Himalayas before, but nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, prepares you for standing in their presence. These are the highest mountains on Earth, and they stretch across the northern boundary of India like a colossal wall separating the subcontinent from the rest of Asia. When you stand in a place like Ladakh or Spiti Valley and look up at peaks that reach above 7,000 meters, something happens inside you. You feel small. Not in a bad way. In a humbling, soul-resetting kind of way. The air is thin, the silence is immense, and the landscape looks like it belongs on another planet. Rocky desert valleys painted in shades of brown and rust and gold, with rivers of glacial blue cutting through them. Buddhist monasteries perch on cliff edges as though they have been there since the beginning of time, and in some cases they nearly have. Hemis Monastery in Ladakh, for example, dates back to the 11th century. Monks still live and practice there, maintaining traditions that have been passed down for 1,000 years. If you want to experience a kind of peace that modern life almost never offers, the Indian Himalayas are where you find it. But let us come down from the mountains because India has so much more waiting for us. Let us talk about Rajasthan. If the Himalayas are India's spiritual crown, Rajasthan is its jeweled necklace. This is the land of kings and warriors, of massive fortresses and shimmering palaces, of deserts that glow orange under the setting sun. The state is located in northwestern India, and it is one of the most visually stunning places you will ever visit. Start with Jaipur, the capital, known as the Pink City because of the terracotta-colored buildings that line its old town. The Hawa Mahal, or Palace of Winds, is an iconic structure with its honeycomb facade of 953 small windows. It was designed so that the women of the royal court could observe the street below without being seen. Then there is the Amber Fort, a sprawling hilltop complex that blends Hindu and Mughal architectural styles in a way that will leave your jaw on the floor. Every surface is detailed, every corridor tells a story, and from the ramparts you can see for miles across the Aravalli Hills. Move west from Jaipur, and you reach Jodhpur, the Blue City. And yes, it really is blue. The old town is a maze of narrow streets and buildings painted in brilliant shades of indigo and cobalt, all watched over by the imposing Mehrangarh Fort. This fortress is one of the largest in India, and when you stand on its walls looking down at the sea of blue houses below, you genuinely feel like you have stepped into a fantasy novel. Keep going west and you hit the Thar Desert, where you can ride camels across sand dunes as the sun drops below the horizon, and the sky turns into a canvas of pink and purple and deep orange. At night, the desert sky fills with more stars than you thought existed. It is the kind of experience that stays with you long after you leave. Now let us shift gears completely. We are heading south to Kerala, and the contrast could not be more dramatic. Kerala is lush, green, tropical, and serene. This is a state defined by water. Backwater canals weave through palm-lined villages, and the best way to experience them is on a traditional houseboat called a ketuvalam. You drift along these calm waterways, watching life unfold on the banks. Women washing clothes at the water's edge, children waving from bridges, fishermen casting nets in the golden afternoon light. It is slow, it is peaceful, and it is profoundly beautiful. Kerala is also home to some of the finest Ayurvedic wellness traditions in the world. Ayurveda, which literally translates to the science of life, originated in India thousands of years ago and is still practiced with deep expertise here. People travel from all over the globe to Kerala specifically for Ayurvedic treatments, and the experience of being cared for in this ancient system of medicine is something truly special. But we are not done with the south. Let us talk about Tamil Nadu because this state contains some of the most extraordinary temples on the planet. The Meenakshi Amman Temple in Madurai is a masterpiece that defies description, but I will try. Imagine a structure covered, and I mean completely covered, in thousands of brightly painted sculptures of gods, goddesses, mythical creatures, and celestial beings. The gopurams, which are the towering gateway structures, rise up to nearly 50 meters and are so densely decorated that your eyes do not know where to look first. This temple is not just a place of worship. It is a living, breathing work of art that has been continuously used and maintained for centuries. The energy inside is extraordinary. Bells ringing, incense drifting through the air, devotees performing rituals with total concentration and devotion. You do not have to be religious to feel something powerful when you walk through those halls. And speaking of temples, we absolutely have to talk about Varanasi. This is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world, and it sits on the banks of the sacred river Ganges in the state of Uttar Pradesh. Varanasi is the spiritual heart of Hinduism, and experiencing it is unlike anything else in travel. And the city is organized around a series of ghats, which are stone steps that lead down to the river. Every morning before dawn, pilgrims descend these ghats to bathe in the Ganges, believing that the water will purify their souls. Every evening, an elaborate ceremony called the Ganga Arti takes place at Dashashwameth Ghat, where priests perform synchronized rituals with fire, incense, and chanting, while thousands of people watch from the steps and from boats on the river. The atmosphere is electric. Candles float on the dark water, smoke curls into the night sky, and the sound of devotional music fills every corner of the ancient city. Varanasi confronts you with the full spectrum of human existence. Birth, death, joy, grief, devotion, and transcendence all exist side by side here, out in the open, with no attempt to hide any of it. It is raw, it is intense, and it will change the way you think about life. Now let us talk about something that every traveler to India anticipates, and rightfully so. The food. Indian cuisine is arguably the most complex and varied culinary tradition on earth. Every region, every state, every city has its own specialties, its own spice combinations, its own cooking techniques. In the north, you have rich, creamy curries like butter chicken and dal makhani, tandoori breads pulled hot from clay ovens, and street food like chaat that hits your taste buds with sweet, sour, spicy, and tangy all at once. In the south, the flavors shift entirely. Rice replaces wheat as the staple, and you encounter dishes like dosa, which is a crispy fermented crepe served with coconut chutney, and sambar, or appam, a bowl-shaped pancake made from rice batter and coconut milk. In Bengal, the cuisine revolves around fish and mustard, and the sweets are legendary. Rasgulla, sandesh, mishti doi. If you have a sweet tooth, Bengal is paradise. In Gujarat, the food is predominantly vegetarian and features an incredible balance of flavors that makes you forget you are not eating meat. And then there is the street food culture, which deserves its own entire video. From the pani puri stalls of Mumbai, to the kebab vendors of Lucknow, to the filter coffee shops of Chennai, eating your way through India is one of the great adventures a human being can have. Let us circle back to architecture because I have not yet mentioned the single most famous structure in India, the Taj Mahal. You might think you know what it looks like from photographs, but I promise you seeing it in person is a completely different experience. The Taj Mahal was built in the 17th century by the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan as a mausoleum for his beloved wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died during childbirth. It took over 20 years and 20,000 workers to complete, and the result is what many people consider the most beautiful building ever created by human hands. The white marble changes color throughout the day. At dawn it appears pinkish, at noon it blazes white, and under moonlight it takes on a soft, ethereal glow. The symmetry is perfect. The inlaid gemstone work is breathtaking. The gardens that surround it are designed to represent paradise. Standing before it, you understand why it is considered one of the 7 wonders of the modern world. It is not just a monument to love. It is a monument to what human beings are capable of when they pour everything they have into creating something magnificent. But India's architectural wonders extend far beyond the Taj Mahal. Consider the cave temples of Ajanta and Ellora in Maharashtra. These are not buildings constructed from the ground up. These are entire temples carved directly into solid rock faces. The Ellora complex contains 34 caves spanning Buddhist, Hindu, and Jain traditions, and the crown jewel is the Kailasa Temple, which is the largest monolithic rock excavation in the world. Engineers estimate that approximately 200,000 tons of rock were removed to create this single structure. 200,000 tons, carved from the top down, without any of the modern tools or technology we take for granted today. When you stand inside it and look at the intricate carvings and massive columns and detailed sculptures, you are struck by a kind of awe that is hard to articulate. How did they do this? The answer is patience, skill, and an unwavering commitment to creating something that would last for eternity. And it has lasted. These caves are over 1,000 years old, and they remain some of the most impressive achievements in the history of human art and engineering. Let me take you somewhere unexpected now. The Northeast. This is the part of India that most international travelers overlook entirely, and honestly, that is a shame, because it is absolutely stunning. The seven sister states of the Northeast, which include Meghalaya, Nagaland, Manipur, Mizoram, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, and Assam, are home to landscapes and cultures that feel worlds apart from the rest of India. Meghalaya, whose name means the abode of clouds, receives some of the highest rainfall on Earth and is covered in lush subtropical forests. Here you will find the famous living root bridges, which are exactly what they sound like. Bridges made from the roots of living trees, carefully guided and shaped over decades by the Khasi people until they form structures strong enough to carry 50 or more people at a time. These bridges are not ancient relics, they are ongoing acts of cooperation between human communities and the natural world, and some of them are over 500 years old and still growing. Nagaland, meanwhile, offers a window into tribal cultures that have maintained distinct identities for centuries. The Hornbill Festival, held every December, is a celebration of Naga heritage featuring traditional dances, music, crafts, and food from all the major tribes of the state. It is vibrant, it is authentic, and it is one of the most unique cultural experiences available anywhere in Asia. Speaking of culture, we need to talk about India's festivals because this country celebrates like no other. Diwali, the festival of lights, transforms the entire nation into a spectacle of illumination. Homes, streets, and public spaces are decorated with millions of oil lamps and candles, fireworks light up the sky, and families come together to share sweets and gifts. Holi, the festival of colors, is pure joyful chaos. People take to the streets armed with colored powders and water guns, and within minutes everyone is drenched in every color imaginable. It does not matter who you are, where you come from, or what language you speak. During Holi, you are part of the celebration. Pongal in Tamil Nadu, Durga Puja in West Bengal, Onam in Kerala, Baisakhi in Punjab. The list goes on and on. India has festivals for every season, every region, every community, and participating in even one of them will give you a glimpse into the incredible warmth and generosity of the Indian people. And that brings me to something I think is the most underappreciated wonder of India, the people themselves. Indian hospitality is legendary, and once you experience it, you understand why. There is a concept in Indian culture captured by the Sanskrit phrase Atiti Devo Bhava, which translates roughly to the guest is equivalent to God. This is not just a nice saying, it is a deeply held value that you encounter constantly as a traveler. Strangers will invite you into their homes for tea. Shopkeepers will spend an hour telling you the history of their craft even if you do not buy anything. Families will go out of their way to help you find your destination, sometimes walking with you for blocks to make sure you do not get lost. The warmth is genuine, it is generous, and it creates connections that last far beyond the trip itself. Now, I want to address something honestly because I think it is important for anyone considering traveling to India. This country can be overwhelming. The sensory input is relentless, the traffic is chaotic, the noise is constant, the heat in summer can be brutal. There are moments where you will feel confused, exhausted, or out of your depth. I am not going to pretend otherwise. But here is what I have learned. That discomfort is part of the transformation. India does not let you stay in your comfort zone. It pushes you, challenges you, surprises you, and ultimately expands you. Every traveler I have ever spoken to who has been to India says the same thing. It changed them. Not in a small way, in a fundamental, lasting way. The things that once seemed important seem less so. The things you took for granted suddenly feel precious. India has this remarkable ability to strip away the superficial and show you what really matters. Let us visit one more place before we wrap up. Goa. This small state on India's western coast is famous for its beaches, and for good reason. Palm-fringed stretches of golden sand meet the warm waters of the Arabian Sea, and the vibe ranges from lively and party-oriented in the north to peaceful and secluded in the south. But Goa is more than just beaches. Its history as a Portuguese colony for over 400 years has left a fascinating cultural imprint. You will find Baroque churches, old Latin Quarter neighborhoods with colorful colonial-era houses, and a cuisine that blends Indian spices with Portuguese techniques in ways that are absolutely delicious. Goan fish curry, vindaloo, bibinka. The food alone is worth the visit. And then there are the sunsets. Goan sunsets over the Arabian Sea are the kind of thing that makes you stop whatever you are doing, put down your phone, and just watch. The sky turns molten, the water catches fire, and for a few minutes the entire world seems to hold its breath. India is also a place of extraordinary wildlife. The country is home to Bengal tigers, Asian elephants, one-horned rhinoceroses, snow leopards, Asiatic lions, and thousands of bird species. National parks like Ranthambore in Rajasthan, Jim Corbett in Uttarakhand, and Kaziranga in Assam offer opportunities to see these magnificent animals in their natural habitats. There is something incredibly moving about watching a wild tiger walk through the tall grass of an Indian forest, unhurried and powerful, completely at home in a landscape that has been its domain for millennia. Conservation efforts in India have achieved remarkable successes in recent decades, with tiger populations recovering significantly thanks to dedicated protection programs. The relationship between India and its wildlife is ancient and complex, reflected in mythology, art, and daily life across the country. Indonesia is not a country. It is a universe. 17,000 islands scattered across the equator, like someone took a handful of emeralds and just tossed them into the ocean. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to understand why this place breaks people open. Why travelers arrive for 2 weeks and stay for 2 years. Why photographers weep. Why poets give up trying to find the right words. Because Indonesia does something to you that no other place on earth does. It rewires your brain. It recalibrates what you think beauty means. And today, we are going to go on a journey together through the most extraordinary corners of this impossibly diverse archipelago. But before we dive in, I need to be honest with you. I spent weeks putting this together, and I kept running into the same problem over and over again. How do you capture a country that has more than 700 living languages? A country where you can stand on a glacier in the morning and swim in a tropical sea by the afternoon? A country where ancient temples older than most European cathedrals sit quietly in jungles while modern megacities pulse with 20 million people just a few hundred miles away? The answer is you cannot capture all of it. Nobody can, but what you can do is show someone enough to make them fall in love. And that is exactly what we are going to try to do right now. Let us start where most people start when they think about Indonesia. Bali. Now I know what some of you are thinking. Bali is overdone. Bali is too touristy. Bali is just Instagram influencers drinking smoothie bowls. And yes, parts of Bali have become commercialized, that is undeniable. But here is what most people miss. Bali earned its reputation for a reason. Strip away the noise, get away from the crowds, in Kuta and Seminyak, and you will find something that hits you right in the chest. Head north to the rice terraces of Tagalalong and stand there at sunrise. Watch the light crawl across those carved green steps that Balinese farmers have been sculpting by hand for centuries. The Subek system, their traditional water management approach, is so ingenious and so culturally significant that UNESCO recognized it as a World Heritage Cultural Landscape. These are not just pretty fields, they are living proof that humans and nature can work together in perfect harmony for over 1,000 years. Then drive east to the Mother Temple, Pura Besaki, perched on the slopes of Mount Agung. This is the most important temple complex on the entire island, and it has been a place of worship for more than 1,000 years. When the clouds part and you can see Agung towering behind the temple spires, it does not feel like a tourist attraction. It feels like standing at the doorway between the human world and something much, much larger. But Bali is just the opening chapter. The real magic happens when you step beyond it. Fly east and you arrive in Komodo National Park. This is where things get wild, literally. These islands are home to the Komodo dragon, the largest living lizard on the planet. We are talking about creatures that can grow to 10 feet long and weigh over 150 pounds. They have been roaming these islands for millions of years, virtually unchanged. Standing 10 feet away from a Komodo dragon in the wild is one of those experiences that rewires your understanding of time. You realize you are looking at a living dinosaur, a predator that has survived every catastrophe this planet has thrown at it, and it is just sitting there, watching you with these ancient, knowing eyes. But Komodo is not just about the dragons. The waters surrounding these islands are some of the richest marine environments on Earth. The coral reefs here sit within the Coral Triangle, which is basically the Amazon rainforest of the ocean. More species of coral and reef fish exist in this region than anywhere else on the planet. Divers come from every corner of the globe to slip beneath these waters and find themselves surrounded by manta rays with wingspans wider than a car, sea turtles gliding through crystal blue channels, and coral gardens so vibrant they look like someone painted them. And then there are the pink beaches. Yes, pink. The sand on certain shores of Komodo gets its color from microscopic organisms called foraminifera, which have red shells that mix with the white sand to create this surreal, blush-colored coastline. You walk along the shore and it genuinely feels like you have stepped onto another planet. Now let us swing west, way west, to Sumatra. If Bali is Indonesia's spiritual heart and Komodo is its wild frontier, then Sumatra is its untamed soul. This is one of the largest islands on Earth, and it contains some of the oldest tropical rainforest anywhere. We are talking about jungle that has existed in some form for tens of millions of years. And hidden within that jungle are creatures found nowhere else: the Sumatran orangutan, the Sumatran tiger, the Sumatran rhinoceros, 3 critically endangered species clinging to survival in the misty highlands and dense lowland forests of this extraordinary island. Trekking through Gunung Lusir National Park in search of wild orangutans is one of those travel experiences that fundamentally changes you. You are walking through primary rainforest, the air thick with moisture and alive with the calls of hundreds of bird species, and then you look up and see an orange figure moving through the canopy 60 feet above your head. A wild orangutan, sharing 97% of your DNA, looking down at you with an intelligence and a gentleness that makes you question everything you thought you knew about what separates humans from the rest of the natural world. But Sumatra has another trick up its sleeve. Lake Toba. This is not just any lake, this is the largest volcanic lake on Earth, formed roughly 74,000 years ago by one of the most catastrophic eruptions in human history. The Toba super eruption was so massive that scientists believe it may have triggered a volcanic winter that lasted years and potentially reduced the global human population to just a few thousand individuals. Some researchers call it the closest humanity has ever come to extinction, and now, 74,000 years later, this place of unimaginable destruction has become one of the most serene and beautiful landscapes in all of Southeast Asia. The lake stretches over 1,000 square kilometers, surrounded by lush green hills and dotted with traditional Batak villages. The Batak people have lived here for centuries, and their culture is rich with music, art, and a hospitality that will make you feel like family within minutes of arriving. Sitting on the shore of Lake Toba at dusk, watching the water turn gold and then purple, knowing that you are sitting inside the crater of an event that nearly ended our species, is the kind of experience that makes everything else in life feel small. Let us keep moving. East now, to Sulawesi. This island is shaped like a bizarre orchid, 4 long peninsulas splaying out in different directions, and it is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. Because of its unique geological history, Sulawesi sits right on the boundary of 2 major biogeographic regions, the Asian and Australian zones, separated by what scientists call Wallace's Line. This means the island has a truly extraordinary collection of endemic species, animals, and plants found nowhere else on Earth. The Toraja Highlands in the south are a place that will challenge everything you think you know about death. The Torajan people have a relationship with their deceased loved ones that is completely unlike anything in Western culture. When a family member dies, they are not immediately buried. Instead, the body is preserved and kept in the family home, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months, sometimes for years. They are spoken to, offered food, and treated as though they are simply ill. When the family has gathered enough resources, an elaborate funeral ceremony takes place, often involving the sacrifice of water buffalo, traditional dances, and celebrations that can last for days. And even after burial in cliffside graves or hanging coffins, the Torajans hold a ceremony called Manene every few years, where they exhume their relatives, clean and dress them in fresh clothes, and parade them through the village. It sounds shocking when you first hear about it, but when you witness it, when you see the love and tenderness with which families care for their ancestors, it stops being strange and starts being beautiful. It forces you to confront your own assumptions about grief, about memory, about what it means to truly honor someone you have lost. Now let us talk about a place that very few travelers ever reach, but those who do never forget it. Raja Ampat. These are a group of islands off the northwest tip of the Bird's Head Peninsula in West Papua, and they contain what many marine biologists consider the single most biodiverse marine ecosystem on the planet. Over 1,500 species of fish, over 500 species of coral, numbers that make scientists shake their heads in disbelief. Diving in Raja Ampat is not like diving anywhere else. The sheer density of life is overwhelming. You descend into water so clear it feels like flying, and suddenly you are surrounded by schools of fish so thick they block out the sun. Pygmy seahorses no bigger than your thumbnail cling to sea fans. Wobbegong sharks lie camouflaged on the sandy bottom. Manta rays cruise overhead like silent aircraft carriers. And the coral is like nothing you have ever seen. Enormous table corals, delicate branching formations, soft corals swaying in the current like underwater gardens from a dream. But what makes Raja Ampat truly special is not just what is under the water. It is what is above it. The islands themselves are ancient limestone karst formations, mushroom-shaped islets covered in dense jungle, rising from turquoise lagoons. Kayaking through these formations at sunset, with the sky burning orange and the only sound being the gentle splash of your paddle and the distant call of a bird of paradise, is the kind of moment that burns itself permanently into your memory. Speaking of birds of paradise, West Papua is where most of the world's bird of paradise species are found. These birds are, without exaggeration, some of the most visually spectacular creatures evolution has ever produced. Males perform elaborate courtship dances that involve transforming their plumage into shapes that do not even look real. One species fans out its feathers into what looks like a glowing blue satellite dish. Another hangs upside down from a branch and turns itself into a bouncing black oval with an electric blue chest plate. Scientists have studied these dances for decades and still find new details that surprise them. Trekking into the highland forests of Papua to watch a bird of paradise display at dawn is one of the rarest and most extraordinary wildlife experiences available anywhere on Earth. It requires patience, endurance, and a willingness to sit in the dark at 4 a.m. waiting for a single bird to appear. But when it does, when that bird transforms itself into something that looks like it was designed by an artist from another dimension, every second of waiting becomes worth it. Let us shift gears now and talk about something that ties all of these places together. The people. Indonesia is the 4th most populous country on Earth, home to over 270 million people spread across those 17,000 islands. And the cultural diversity is staggering. More than 300 distinct ethnic groups, more than 700 languages. The national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, means unity in diversity, and it is not just a slogan, it is the daily reality of life in this country. In Java, you will find the ancient Buddhist monument of Borobudur, the largest Buddhist temple in the world, built in the 9th century and containing over 2,000 relief panels and 500 Buddhist statues. Walking through Borobudur at sunrise as mist rises from the surrounding jungle and the volcanic peaks of central Java glow pink on the horizon is one of those bucket list moments that actually exceeds the hype. The temple was buried under volcanic ash and jungle for centuries before being rediscovered in the early 19th century, and its restoration is one of the great archaeological achievements of the modern era. Just 40 kilometers away sits Prambanan, a Hindu temple compound from roughly the same era, with towering spires dedicated to Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. The fact that these two magnificent monuments, one Buddhist and one Hindu, exist so close together and were built during overlapping periods tells you something profound about the tolerance and cultural richness that has defined Java for over a millennium. And then there is the food. Indonesian cuisine is one of the most underrated in the world, and I will fight anyone who disagrees. Rendang, the slow-cooked coconut and spice-braised beef that originated with the Minangkabau people of West Sumatra, has been voted the most delicious food in the world in multiple international surveys. And that is just the beginning. Nasi goreng, the ubiquitous fried rice that varies from island to island and family to family. Satay, skewered and grilled meat served with peanut sauce that ranges from sweet to fiery depending on where you are. Bakso, the comforting meatball soup sold by street vendors from wheeled carts on practically every corner of every city. Gado-gado, The vegetable salad drenched in a peanut dressing so good it could make you forget that you are eating something healthy. Each island, each region, each city has its own specialties, its own spice combinations, its own cooking techniques passed down through generations. Eating your way through Indonesia is not just a culinary experience. It is a cultural education. Now I want to take you to one more place. A place that represents everything I love about this country. The Banda Islands. These tiny volcanic islands in the far eastern reaches of the archipelago were once the most valuable pieces of real estate on the entire planet. For centuries, they were the world's only source of nutmeg, a spice that was worth more than gold in medieval Europe. Colonial powers fought brutal wars over these islands. The Dutch traded Manhattan to the British in exchange for one of the Banda Islands, a deal that seems absurd today but made perfect economic sense in the 17th century when nutmeg was one of the most precious commodities on Earth. Today, the Banda Islands are quiet, peaceful, and almost completely off the tourist radar. You can walk through crumbling Dutch colonial forts, swim in crystalline waters teeming with marine life, and buy fresh nutmeg directly from farmers who tend the same groves that once drove European empires to war. The contrast between the violent history and the present-day tranquility is haunting and beautiful in equal measure. And I think that contrast captures something essential about Indonesia. This is a country of layers. Layers of history, layers of culture, layers of geology, layers of meaning. Every island tells a different story. Every community preserves a different tradition. Every landscape reveals a different face of this endlessly complex and endlessly fascinating nation. Indonesia also sits along the Pacific Ring of Fire, which gives it one of the most dramatic volcanic landscapes on the planet. There are roughly 130 active volcanoes here, more than any other country. Mount Bromo in East Java is perhaps the most iconic, a smoking crater rising from a vast sea of volcanic sand, surrounded by towering caldera walls. Watching the sunrise from the rim of Bromo, with clouds pouring over the caldera edge and the cone belching white smoke against a canvas of orange and pink sky, is genuinely one of the most photographed moments in all of Asia, and it deserves every bit of that attention. Then there is Kawah Ijen, also in East Java, where miners descend into a volcanic crater every night to harvest sulfur by hand. The crater contains the world's largest acidic lake, a surreal turquoise pool of liquid that looks beautiful but is deadly. At night, the sulfuric gases ignite into electric blue flames that cascade down the crater walls, creating one of the most otherworldly natural spectacles on the planet. The miners who work here carry loads of up to 80 kilograms of sulfur on their backs, climbing out of the crater in the dark, illuminated by the blue fire. Their working conditions are brutal, their pay is minimal, and their life expectancy is tragically shortened by the toxic fumes they breathe every night. It is simultaneously one of the most beautiful and one of the most heartbreaking things you will ever witness, and it serves as a powerful reminder that behind every stunning landscape, there are human stories that deserve to be told. Indonesia challenges you. It does not let you be a passive observer. It demands that you engage, that you feel, that you question your assumptions, and expand your understanding of what the world can be. Whether you are floating in a crystal lagoon in Raja Ampat, standing in the shadow of an ancient temple in Java, sharing a meal with a Batak family on the shores of Lake Toba, or watching a bird of paradise dance in a Papuan forest at dawn, this country has an uncanny ability to make you feel simultaneously insignificant and deeply, profoundly alive. And here is what I think is the real wonder of Indonesia. It is not any single place. It is not the temples or the volcanoes or the reefs or the dragons or the rice terraces. As extraordinary as all of those things are, the real wonder is the sheer improbability of it all. That one country, one nation could contain so much diversity, so much beauty, so much history, so much life, all woven together into something that somehow works. 17,000 islands, hundreds of cultures, hundreds of languages, millions of stories, all bound together under that one beautiful motto, unity in diversity. Ireland is one of those places that sneaks up on you. You arrive expecting green hills and old pubs, and you leave wondering how a single island managed to pack so much magic into such a small piece of earth. Today we are going on a journey across one of the most beautiful countries on the planet, and I promise you, by the end of this video, you are going to be looking up flights. Let me ask you something. Have you ever stood on the edge of a cliff with nothing between you and the Atlantic Ocean but wind and mist and the faint sound of waves crashing hundreds of feet below? Have you ever walked through a castle ruin where you could almost hear the whispers of people who lived there 1,000 years ago? Have you ever driven down a road so narrow that the hedgerows brushed both sides of your car only to round a corner and see a view so stunning it made you pull over and just stare? That is Ireland. That is what this country does to you. And here is the thing most people get wrong about Ireland. They think it is just Dublin. They think it is Temple Bar and Guinness and maybe a quick bus tour to the cliffs of Moher. And look, Dublin is wonderful. We will get there. But Ireland is so much deeper than that. The real Ireland, the Ireland that stays with you long after you have gone home, lives in the tiny coastal villages, in the mountains nobody talks about, in the islands where people still speak Irish as their first language. So buckle up. We are going everywhere. Let us start where most people start, and that is Dublin. Now, Dublin is a city that wears its history like a comfortable old coat. You feel it the moment you step onto those Georgian streets with their colorful doors and iron railings. The city has been around for over 1,000 years, founded by Vikings who sailed up the River Liffey and decided this was a pretty good spot to set up shop. And honestly, they were not wrong. Walking through Dublin is like flipping through the pages of a living history book. You have got Trinity College, which was founded in 1592 and houses the Book of Kells, one of the most extraordinary illuminated manuscripts ever created. Monks on the island of Iona painstakingly crafted this masterpiece over 1,200 years ago, and seeing it in person is one of those moments where you just stand there in awe of what human hands can achieve. Then there is Dublin Castle, St. Patrick's Cathedral, the old cobblestone streets of the Liberties neighborhood. But Dublin is not stuck in the past. It is a city buzzing with energy. The tech industry has transformed entire neighborhoods. The food scene has exploded over the past decade. And the literary tradition, well, this is the city that gave us James Joyce, Oscar Wilde, Samuel Beckett, and Bram Stoker. There is literally a statue of Oscar Wilde lounging on a rock in Merrion Square, and it captures the spirit of Dublin perfectly, this combination of brilliance and irreverence and humor. But we need to move on because the rest of the country is calling. Head south from Dublin and you will find yourself in County Wicklow, which the Irish call the Garden of Ireland, and for good reason. Wicklow is where the mountains meet the sea, and the result is landscapes that look like they were painted by someone who had an unlimited supply of green paint. Glendalough is the jewel here, a glacial valley with 2 lakes, ancient monastic ruins, and hiking trails that wind through forests so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat. The monastic settlement there was founded in the 6th century by St. Kevin, and there is something profoundly peaceful about standing among those old stone buildings surrounded by nothing but nature. Now I want to take you to one of the most dramatic stretches of coastline on earth. We are heading west across the country to County Clare and the cliffs of Moher, and I know everybody talks about the cliffs of Moher, but there is a reason for that. These cliffs rise over 700 feet straight out of the Atlantic Ocean, stretching for about 8 miles along the coast. On a clear day, you can see the Aran Islands to the north and the mountains of Connemara beyond them. On a stormy day, and honestly stormy days might be even better, waves explode against the base of the cliffs and the wind hits you so hard you have to lean into it just to stay upright. But here's a tip that most travel guides will not tell you. Skip the main visitor center and walk south along the cliff path toward Hag's Head. The crowds thin out dramatically and you get views that are arguably even better. There is a stone watchtower out there, and standing beside it with the Atlantic stretching out to infinity in front of you, that is one of those moments that reminds you why we travel in the first place. While we are in County Clare, we need to talk about the Burren. This is one of the most unique landscapes in all of Europe, and it does not get nearly enough attention. The Burren is a vast expanse of limestone karst, essentially a moonscape of cracked gray rock that stretches as far as you can see. But here's the magical part. In the cracks and crevices of that rock, wildflowers bloom in extraordinary abundance. Arctic and Mediterranean plant species grow side by side here, something that happens almost nowhere else on the planet. Scientists have been puzzling over the Burren's ecology for centuries. Walking through the Burren feels like walking on another planet. There are dolmens, ancient stone burial tombs scattered across the landscape. The most famous is Polnabrone Dolmen, a 5,000-year-old portal tomb that looks like a giant stone table rising out of the rock. Think about that for a moment. People built this structure 3,000 years before the Roman Empire even existed. Now let us continue up the west coast because this is where Ireland really starts to show off. The Wild Atlantic Way is one of the longest defined coastal routes in the world, stretching over 1,600 miles from County Cork in the south to County Donegal in the north. And driving it, or even just sections of it, is one of the great road trip experiences you can have anywhere. As you move into County Galway, the landscape shifts again. This is Connemara, a region of rugged mountains, peat bogs, and wild Atlantic beaches. The 12 Bends mountain range dominates the skyline, and Connemara National Park offers some of the best hiking in the country. But what makes Connemara special is not just the scenery. This is one of the strongholds of the Gaeltacht, the Irish-speaking regions. You will see road signs only in Irish. You will hear the language spoken in shops and pubs. It is a living connection to a culture that stretches back thousands of years. Galway City itself is something special. It is small enough to walk across in 20 minutes, but it punches so far above its weight in terms of culture and atmosphere that it regularly gets named one of the best cities in Europe to visit. The streets are filled with buskers and street performers. The pubs overflow with traditional music sessions that start spontaneously and can go on until the early hours. There is an energy to Galway that is hard to describe but impossible to miss. If Dublin is Ireland's head, Galway is its heart. From Galway, many people take a ferry or a small plane out to the Aran Islands, and this is something I cannot recommend strongly enough. The three islands, Innismore, Innismeain, and Innisoir, sit out in Galway Bay like stepping stones into the Atlantic. Life moves at a different pace here. People get around by bicycle or horse-drawn cart. The stone walls that crisscross the islands have been built and rebuilt for centuries. And on Innismore, you will find Dún an Gasa, one of the most spectacular prehistoric stone forts in Europe, perched right on the edge of a 300-foot cliff. Standing there, with nothing between you and America but 3,000 miles of ocean, you feel like you are standing at the edge of the world. And in a way, for thousands of years, people believed you were. Let us keep moving north. County Mayo is next, and it is absolutely gorgeous in a wild, untamed way that feels different from the rest of Ireland. Croagh Patrick, Ireland's holy mountain, rises above Clew Bay like a perfect cone. Every year, tens of thousands of people climb it, many of them barefoot, on the last Sunday of July, in a tradition that goes back to St. Patrick himself, and the views from the summit are extraordinary. Looking out over Clew Bay with its hundreds of tiny islands, it is the kind of panorama that makes you understand why people have considered this place sacred for millennia. Nearby, Achill Island is connected to the mainland by a bridge and offers some of the most dramatic scenery in the country. The beaches there, particularly Keem Bay, are jaw-dropping. Picture white sand, turquoise water, and massive cliffs surrounding a sheltered cove. You would swear you were in the Mediterranean if it were not for the wind reminding you that no, you are very much in the North Atlantic. Now we reach what I think might be the most underrated part of Ireland. County Donegal. Oh, this is as far north as you can go on the island, and it is absolutely wild. The sea stacks at Slieve League are taller than the cliffs of Moher, but get a fraction of the visitors. The beaches at Malin Head, the northernmost point of the island, are breathtaking. And the interior of Donegal, with its mountains and glens and lakes, has a sense of solitude and remoteness that is increasingly hard to find in Europe. Donegal is also where you will find some of the best traditional Irish music. The Donegal fiddle tradition is world-renowned, and on any given night in a small pub in a small town, you might stumble into a session that would rank among the best musical experiences of your life. That is one of the beautiful things about Ireland. The best moments are often the ones you do not plan. Let us swing back across the country now and talk about Northern Ireland. And yes, I know Northern Ireland is technically part of the United Kingdom, but geographically and culturally, it is very much part of the island of Ireland, and you absolutely should not skip it. Belfast is a city that has undergone one of the most remarkable transformations of any city in Europe. Decades of conflict known as the Troubles scarred this city deeply, but Belfast has emerged with incredible resilience, creativity, and pride. The Titanic Quarter, built on the very spot where the Titanic was constructed, is now a world-class museum and entertainment district. The Cathedral Quarter buzzes with restaurants and bars and street art. And the murals throughout the city, while many of them are reminders of a painful past, are also powerful works of art that tell the story of a community that refused to be defined by conflict. From Belfast, you can reach the Giant's Causeway in about an hour, and this is one of those places that you have to see to believe. About 40,000 interlocking basalt columns rise from the sea, most of them hexagonal, formed by an ancient volcanic eruption roughly 60 million years ago. But the legend is better than the science. According to Irish mythology, the giant Finn McCool built the causeway so he could walk across the sea to Scotland to fight a rival giant. When you see it, the legend actually feels more plausible than the geology. It is that otherworldly. The Causeway coastal route that connects Belfast to the Giant's Causeway is one of the most scenic drives in the world. You pass through charming seaside towns over heart-stopping rope bridges like the Carrick Red Bridge and past castle ruins perched on cliff tops. If you are a fan of a certain television show about thrones and dragons, you will recognize many of these locations. Northern Ireland served as a primary filming location for that series, and the landscape makes it immediately obvious why. Now let us head south again because I've been saving some treasures. The Ring of Kerry in County Kerry is one of Ireland's most famous scenic routes, a roughly 100-mile loop around the Iveragh Peninsula. The drive takes you past some of the most spectacular mountain and coastal scenery in the country. Lakes, waterfalls, ancient stone forts, and colorful villages follow one after another in a relentless parade of beauty. But the real gem of Kerry, in my opinion, is the Dingle Peninsula. Dingle is smaller and quieter than the Ring of Kerry, and it has a magic all its own. The town of Dingle itself is a tiny fishing village with more pubs per capita than almost anywhere in Ireland, and every one of them seems to have live music on any given night. The Sliabh Head Drive that loops around the peninsula passes beehive huts that are over 1,000 years old, ancient oratories, and beaches that would not look out of place in a Caribbean travel brochure if you just increase the temperature by about 20 degrees. Off the coast of Dingle, you can see the Skellig Islands, and Skellig Michael is genuinely one of the most awe-inspiring places on this planet. Imagine a jagged rock pyramid rising 600 feet out of the Atlantic, and now imagine that 1,200 years ago, monks decided to build a monastery at the very top. They carved 600 steps into the rock face and built stone beehive huts that still stand today. Getting there requires a boat ride across open ocean that is not for the faint of heart, and the climb up those ancient steps is genuinely challenging. But standing at the top, looking out at the ocean from this impossible place, knowing that people lived and prayed here in almost total isolation for hundreds of years, it is one of the most humbling and extraordinary experiences travel can offer. You might also recognize Skellig Michael from a certain space opera franchise. It served as a filming location in a galaxy far, far away, and when you see it, you understand why. It looks like it belongs on another world. County Cork in the south is another essential stop. Cork City is Ireland's second largest city and has a proud independent streak, with locals famously referring to it as the real capital of Ireland. The English Market, a covered food market dating back to the 18th century, is a feast for the senses. The streets around it are filled with quirky shops, excellent restaurants, and a vibrant arts scene. Near Cork, you will find Blarney Castle and its famous Blarney Stone. Kissing the stone is supposed to give you the gift of eloquence, and while I cannot verify whether that actually works, the castle itself and its extensive gardens are well worth a visit regardless of your feelings about kissing ancient rocks. The coastal town of Kinsale, just south of Cork, is often called the food capital of Ireland, and it more than lives up to that title. But it is also stunningly beautiful, with brightly painted buildings cascading down to a gorgeous natural harbor. I want to talk for a moment about something you cannot see in photographs, and that is the people. Ireland's greatest wonder is not a cliff or a castle or a mountain. It is the Irish people themselves. There is a warmth and generosity of spirit here that is genuinely unique. Conversations with strangers in pubs turn into friendships. Ask for directions and you might end up being driven to your destination. There is a phrase in Irish, Cead mille failte, which means 100,000 welcomes, and it is not just a slogan. It is something you feel in every interaction. The tradition of storytelling runs deep in Irish culture. People here do not just answer your questions, they tell you stories. And those stories are peppered with humor and wisdom and a particular kind of Irish wit that is sharp and gentle at the same time. An evening spent in a traditional pub with music playing and conversation flowing and a pint of stout in your hand is worth more than a dozen tourist attractions. And the music. We have to talk about the music. Traditional Irish music is not something that happens on a stage for an audience. It happens in a circle of chairs in the corner of a pub, with musicians playing fiddles and tin whistles and bodhrans and uilleann pipes, and everyone in the room is part of it. The tunes can be joyful and riotous, making you want to dance, or they can be achingly beautiful and melancholic, making you want to cry. Often they manage to be both within the same session. This musical tradition has been passed down orally for centuries, and experiencing it live in its natural habitat is one of the truly great cultural experiences available anywhere in the world. I should mention the weather, because everyone asks about the weather. Yes, it rains in Ireland. It rains a lot. But here's the secret that nobody tells you. The rain is part of the magic. Those 40 shades of green that Ireland is famous for do not happen without rain. The mist that clings to the mountains and drifts through the valleys creates an atmosphere that sunshine alone could never achieve. And the weather changes so rapidly that you can experience all 4 seasons in a single afternoon. That means the light is constantly shifting, and when the sun does break through the clouds, it hits the wet landscape and everything glows with an almost supernatural intensity. Photographers call it the Irish light, and it is legendary for a reason. Right now, somewhere in Japan, a bullet train is silently cutting through a valley at nearly 200 miles per hour, and outside that window there is a view so stunning that people fly halfway around the world just to press their face against the glass. But here's the thing. That train ride is maybe the 5th most incredible experience you can have in a single day in this country. Japan is not just a destination. It is a sensory overload wrapped in thousands of years of tradition, served alongside some of the best food on the planet, and presented with a level of precision and care that will genuinely make you rethink how every other country operates. I've spent an unreasonable amount of time researching, planning, and dreaming about this place. And today, I want to take you on a journey through the wonders of Japan. Not the generic top 10 list you have seen 100 times. I want to show you why Japan hits different. Why people who visit once become obsessed. Why travelers who have been everywhere consistently rank it as the single greatest country they have ever experienced. And by the end of this video, I think you will understand exactly why. Let us start with the moment you arrive, because Japan begins impressing you before you even leave the airport. You land at Narita or Haneda, and immediately something feels different. The air inside the terminal is clean in a way that seems intentional. The floors shine, every sign is perfectly placed, and there are no scuff marks on the walls. And then you notice the people. Airport staff bow as you pass. Directions are given with both hands in a gesture of respect. Your luggage appears on the carousel wrapped and handled as if someone actually cared about your belongings. This is not performance, this is just how things work here. You step onto the train that connects the airport to central Tokyo, and that is where the first real wave hits you. The train is on time, not roughly on time, and not a few minutes late with an apology. It arrives at the exact second it was scheduled to arrive. Japan's rail system is famous for this, and the numbers are almost absurd. The average delay across the entire Shinkansen network in a given year is measured in seconds. Not minutes, seconds. If a train is more than a minute late, it is considered a significant disruption, and the rail company will publicly apologize. There was a case where a train departed 20 seconds early and the company issued a formal apology to the public. 20 seconds, let that sink in for a moment, and then think about the last time you waited 45 minutes for a bus that never showed up. But the trains are more than just punctual. The Shinkansen, the bullet train, is one of the great engineering achievements of the modern world. It launched in 1964, just in time for the Tokyo Olympics, and it fundamentally changed how humans thought about ground transportation. These trains cruise at speeds that would terrify you in a car, but inside the cabin you barely feel the motion. You could balance a coin on the armrest and it would not fall. The ride is that smooth. And the network connects the major cities so efficiently that flying domestically within Japan often makes less sense than just taking the train. Now let me take you into Tokyo, because this city deserves its own conversation. Tokyo is the largest metropolitan area on Earth. Nearly 38 million people live and work within its sprawl, and somehow it functions. Not just functions, it thrives, it pulses, it overwhelms you with possibility. Every neighborhood is its own universe. Shibuya is controlled chaos with its famous scramble crossing, where up to 3,000 people cross the intersection at once, moving in every direction, and somehow nobody collides. Shinjuku is neon and noise and nightlife stacked on top of itself in layers that go both up into the skyscrapers and down into underground shopping complexes that stretch for miles. Akihabara is electric town where anime culture and technology merge into a fever dream of color and sound. Harajuku is where fashion becomes performance art and young people dress in styles so creative and bold that you will stand on the sidewalk with your mouth open. But here is what catches most visitors off guard. Despite all of this energy, Tokyo is also incredibly peaceful. Walk 10 minutes from any major hub and you will find yourself on a quiet residential street lined with small houses and potted plants, where an elderly woman is sweeping her doorstep and a cat is sleeping in a patch of sunlight. This contrast is one of Tokyo's greatest gifts. It offers you everything and then it gives you space to breathe. And then there are the temples. In the middle of this ultra-modern megacity, you will stumble upon Meiji Shrine, surrounded by a forest of 100,000 trees that were donated from across Japan when the shrine was built over a century ago. You walk through the massive torii gate, and the noise of the city simply vanishes. The air changes, the light changes, you are suddenly in a sacred space that feels ancient and timeless, even though millions of people visit every year. That ability to hold the modern and the traditional in perfect balance is something Japan does better than anywhere else on Earth. Let us talk about Kyoto, because if Tokyo is Japan's beating heart, then Kyoto is its soul. This was the imperial capital for over 1,000 years, and it shows. There are more than 2,000 temples and shrines in Kyoto. 2,000. You could visit a different one every day for over 5 years and still not see them all. But let me highlight a few that will genuinely change the way you see the world. Fushimi Inari is probably the one you have seen in photographs. Thousands of bright vermilion torii gates line a path that winds up the mountainside, creating a tunnel of color that seems to stretch on forever. Most tourists walk the first section, take their photos, and turn around. But if you keep going, if you commit to the full hike, which takes about 2 to 3 hours, you will find yourself alone on the mountain, surrounded by nothing but forest and those endless gates and the sound of your own footsteps. It becomes meditative. It becomes spiritual, even if you did not come looking for that. Kinkakuji, the golden pavilion, sits at the edge of a mirror pond, and on a still day, the reflection is so perfect that you cannot tell which is real, the building or its image in the water. The top 2 stories are covered entirely in gold leaf, and it glows in the afternoon sun in a way that photographs never fully capture. There is a reason this is one of the most visited sites in all of Japan. It stops you in your tracks. And then there is the bamboo grove in Arashiyama, and you walk into this forest and the bamboo towers above you, swaying gently, creating a sound that the Japanese describe as one of the 100 soundscapes of Japan that should be preserved. The light filters through in green shafts, and the whole world narrows down to this single path through these impossibly tall stalks. It is one of those rare places where every single person, regardless of where they come from or what they believe, pauses and feels something. Now, I need to talk about the food, because honestly, this might be the strongest argument for booking a flight tomorrow. Japanese cuisine is not just good, it is arguably the most refined food culture on the planet. Tokyo alone has more Michelin-starred restaurants than any other city in the world. More than Paris. More than New York. And the incredible thing is that some of the best meals you will ever eat in Japan will not come from fancy restaurants. They will come from tiny ramen shops with 8 seats and a single chef who has spent 30 years perfecting one dish. They will come from street vendors selling takoyaki, those crispy golden octopus balls that crack open to reveal a molten center that burns your mouth, and you do not care because the flavor is transcendent. They will come from convenience stores, and yes, I am serious. Japanese convenience stores sell food that would qualify as a respectable meal in most countries. Onigiri, rice balls with perfectly seasoned fillings, egg sandwiches on milk bread that is so soft it feels like a cloud. Fresh sushi that has no business being that good for $3. Sushi in Japan is a completely different experience from what most of the world calls sushi. At a proper sushi counter, the chef selects each piece of fish based on what arrived that morning. The rice is seasoned and shaped by hand at a specific temperature. The fish is placed on top, and you are expected to eat it within seconds before the temperature changes, because the interplay between the warm rice and the cool fish is part of the design. Every single piece is a tiny masterpiece of flavor, texture, and intention. It is not a meal. It is a performance. And then there is ramen. Every region of Japan has its own style. Tonkotsu from Fukuoka with its rich, creamy pork bone broth that has been simmered for hours until it turns white and thick. Miso ramen from Sapporo Hardy, and warming perfect for cold Hokkaido winters. Shoyu ramen from Tokyo, clean and elegant with a soy sauce base that highlights rather than hides the ingredients. People will travel across the country to visit a specific ramen shop because the broth, the noodles, the toppings, they all tell a story of place and tradition and obsessive craft. Let me shift gears and take you somewhere that feels like a different planet. Hokkaido is Japan's northernmost main island, and it is a world apart from the dense urban energy of Tokyo or the cultural richness of Kyoto. Hokkaido is vast, open, and wild. In winter, it receives some of the deepest, most consistent powder snow on Earth, and skiers and snowboarders from around the world make the pilgrimage to Niseko and Furano to experience what locals simply call Japao. The snow is so light, so dry, so impossibly fluffy that it redefines what you thought snow could be. But Hokkaido is not just winter. In summer, the lavender fields of Furano bloom in waves of purple that roll across the hillsides like something from a painting. The seafood in Hokkaido is legendary. Hairy crab sea urchins, scallops the size of your fist, pulled from water so cold and clean that the flavor is intensely pure. Sapporo, the capital of Hokkaido, is a laid-back city with wide streets, excellent beer, and a food scene that rivals anything in mainland Japan. Now let us go south, way south. Okinawa is Japan's tropical paradise, a chain of islands that stretches toward Taiwan with turquoise water, white sand beaches, and coral reefs teeming with life. But Okinawa is more than just beautiful. It is one of the world's blue zones, a place where people routinely live past 100. Scientists have studied the Okinawan lifestyle for decades trying to understand why. The answers seem to involve a combination of diet rich in vegetables, tofu, and fish, a strong sense of community, a concept called ikigai, which roughly translates to a reason for getting up in the morning, and a cultural attitude toward aging that is fundamentally different from the Western world. Okinawa also has its own distinct culture, separate from mainland Japan, with unique music, dance, food, and traditions that reflect centuries of independent history as the Ryukyu Kingdom. I want to take you to one more place that most travel videos skip entirely. The Japanese Alps. Yes, Japan has Alps and they are spectacular. The Tateyama-Kurobe Alpine Route takes you through mountains that in spring have walls of snow reaching 60 feet high on either side of the road. Kamakochi is a highland valley so pristine that the Japanese government has restricted vehicle access to protect it. You hike along crystal-clear rivers with the peaks of the northern Alps rising above you, and the silence is almost overwhelming after the intensity of the cities. And scattered through these mountains are onsen towns. An onsen is a natural hot spring bath, and bathing culture in Japan is ancient and deeply important. You soak in mineral-rich water heated by volcanic activity, often outdoors, surrounded by snow-capped mountains, or autumn leaves, or the steam rising into cold mountain air. It is not just relaxation, it is ritual. It is a way of connecting to nature, to your own body, to the simple pleasure of being warm and still and present. Many visitors say that their onsen experience was the single most peaceful moment of their entire trip. Let me talk about something that threads through everything I have described so far. It is a concept that does not translate perfectly into English, but the Japanese word is omoten nashi. It means hospitality, but that does not capture it fully. Omotenashi is anticipating someone's needs before they even know they have them. It is the taxi driver who opens the door for you with a white-gloved hand. It is the hotel that remembers you mentioned you like green tea and has a cup waiting in your room. It is the restaurant that wraps your leftovers in origami. It is the culture of treating every interaction with care and respect, not because you are paying for it, but because that is what it means to serve another person. Once you experience omotenashi, you will feel its absence everywhere else you go for the rest of your life. This brings me to something I find endlessly fascinating about Japan. The concept of wabi-sabi. Where Western culture tends to chase perfection and permanence, Japan has a philosophical tradition that finds beauty in imperfection and impermanence. A cracked bowl repaired with gold. A weathered wooden gate. The falling cherry blossoms that are beautiful precisely because they are fleeting. This philosophy shows up everywhere once you start looking for it. In the deliberate asymmetry of a traditional garden, in the rough texture of a handmade teacup, in the acceptance that seasons change and things end, and that is not sad. That is what makes them precious. Speaking of cherry blossoms, I would be doing you a disservice if I did not talk about Hanami. Every spring, usually late March through mid-April, the cherry trees across Japan burst into bloom and the entire country celebrates. People gather under the trees with blankets and food and drinks, and they simply sit together and watch the petals fall. The forecast for cherry blossom season is a national event. It is broadcast on the news with maps tracking the bloom front as it moves from south to north across the islands. Parks fill up, rivers become lined with pink, entire mountainsides transform, and then within about a week the petals fall, and it is over. That brevity, that fleeting perfect beauty is the entire point. It is wabi-sabi in its purest form. Autumn in Japan is equally stunning. The momiji, the changing maple leaves, turn the temples of Kyoto and the mountains of Nikko into landscapes of red, orange, and gold that rival any autumn display anywhere in the world. Many temples illuminate the trees at night, and the reflection of fiery leaves in temple ponds creates scenes so beautiful they seem digitally enhanced. They are not, that is just Japan. I want to address something practical for a moment because I know many people assume Japan is prohibitively expensive. The truth might surprise you. While luxury experiences certainly exist and are world-class, Japan can be remarkably affordable. Budget hotels are clean and efficient. Train passes offer incredible value for tourists. Street food and casual dining are inexpensive and outstanding. You can have one of the best food days of your life in Japan for $30 or $40. The 100 yen shops are treasure troves of useful and quirky items. And the fact that Japan is one of the safest countries in the world means you are unlikely to encounter the petty theft and scams that plague tourists in many other popular destinations. People leave their bags unattended at restaurants. Children ride the subway alone. Wallets that are lost are returned with the cash still inside. The safety and cleanliness of Japan deserve special attention. The streets are immaculate, and here is the paradox: there are almost no public trash cans. People carry their garbage with them until they find a proper place to dispose of it. This is not enforced by fines or cameras. It is simply how people behave. The respect for shared space is so deeply ingrained that littering is essentially unthinkable. Crime rates are extraordinarily low. The cultural emphasis on harmony, on not being a burden on others, on contributing to the collective good, creates an environment that feels remarkably peaceful and secure. Kenya is one of those places that changes you. And I know that sounds like a cliche, something you read on a travel blog or hear from someone who spent 2 weeks abroad and suddenly thinks they found enlightenment. But I mean it in a very specific way. Kenya rewires something in your brain. It shifts the scale of what you think is beautiful, what you think is possible, and honestly, what you think matters. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what I mean. And if you have never seriously considered visiting Kenya before, I am willing to bet that is going to change in the next few minutes. Let me start with something that most people do not expect. When you think of Kenya, you probably picture savannas, wide open grasslands, maybe a lion or two, the golden light of an African sunset. And yes, all of that is absolutely real and absolutely stunning. But Kenya is not just one landscape. It is a country that somehow managed to collect almost every type of terrain the planet has to offer and compress it into a space roughly the size of Texas. You have tropical beaches along the Indian Ocean coastline. You have snow-capped mountains near the equator. You have dense forests, arid deserts, fertile highlands, and freshwater lakes that stretch to the horizon. The diversity is almost absurd. It is as if nature looked at Kenya and said, I am going to put everything here and see what happens. And what happened is one of the most visually spectacular countries on Earth. Let us start where most people start when they think about Kenya, and that is the wildlife. The Masai Mara National Reserve is arguably the most famous wildlife destination in the world, and there is a very good reason for that. Every year between July and October, something extraordinary takes place. Over 2 million wildebeest, along with hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, make their way from the Serengeti in Tanzania northward into the Mara. This is the Great Migration, and it is considered one of the most awe-inspiring natural events on the planet. Imagine standing on a ridge and watching an endless river of animals flowing across the plains below you. The ground vibrates. The sound is overwhelming, dust rises into the air and catches the light, and everything looks like it belongs in a documentary, except you are there, standing in it, breathing it in. But the migration is just one piece of the puzzle. On any given day in the Masai Mara, you might spot lions lounging in the tall grass, cheetahs scanning the horizon for prey, elephants moving in slow, dignified herds, leopards draped over the branches of acacia trees, and hippos wallowing in the Mara River. The big five, lion, leopard, rhinoceros, elephant, and Cape buffalo, are all present here. And seeing them in the wild, in their natural habitat, not behind glass or in a zoo, is a fundamentally different experience. There is a rawness to it, a humility that settles over you when you realize you are a guest in their world. Now here is something that a lot of travelers do not know. The Masai Mara is far from the only place to see incredible wildlife in Kenya. Amboseli National Park, located at the base of Mount Kilimanjaro, offers one of the most iconic views in all of Africa. Picture this: a massive herd of elephants walking slowly across a dry lake bed, and behind them, rising dramatically from the flat terrain, is Kilimanjaro, its peak dusted with snow, its flanks wrapped in clouds. It is a photograph that practically takes itself. Amboseli is also home to over 400 species of birds, which makes it a paradise for birdwatchers. You will see everything from martial eagles to flamingos to lilac-breasted rollers, which might be the most beautiful bird I have ever seen in my life. Then there is Tsavo, which is actually split into two parks, Tsavo East and Tsavo West. Together, they form one of the largest wildlife sanctuaries in the world. Tsavo is less crowded than the Mara, which means the experience feels more intimate, more raw. Tsavo East is known for its vast plains and the Galana River, where crocodiles bask on the banks and herds of elephants come to drink. The elephants here are famous for their reddish color, which comes from the red volcanic soil they dust themselves with. Tsavo West, meanwhile, is more rugged and mountainous, with the stunning Mzima Springs, where you can actually watch hippos and fish through an underwater viewing chamber. It feels like something out of a nature documentary because it literally is. Many documentaries have been filmed here. Let me shift gears now because I promised you that Kenya is more than wildlife, and I want to deliver on that promise. Let us talk about the coast. Kenya has over 500 kilometers of Indian Ocean coastline, and it is nothing short of paradise. The beaches here are white sand fringed with palm trees, and the water is that impossible shade of turquoise that you think only exists in photo filters but is actually very real. The coastal city of Mombasa is a destination in itself. It is Kenya's second largest city and its oldest, with a history that stretches back over 1,000 years. Mombasa has been a trading port for centuries, visited by merchants from Arabia, India, Portugal, and beyond. That history is baked into the architecture, the food, the culture. The old town in Mombasa is a labyrinth of narrow streets, carved wooden doors, and buildings that blend Swahili, Arab, and European influences in ways that are completely unique. Just north of Mombasa, you will find Watamu and Malindi, two coastal towns that offer world-class snorkeling and diving. The Watamu Marine National Park protects a stunning coral reef teeming with tropical fish, sea turtles, and even the occasional whale shark. The biodiversity here is remarkable. Beneath the surface of the water, you are entering a completely different world, one that is just as rich and complex as the savannas above ground. And then there is Lamu. Lamu Island is one of the oldest and best preserved Swahili settlements in East Africa, and it is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. There are no cars on Lamu, the streets are too narrow. Instead, people get around on foot or by donkey. The town has a dreamlike quality to it. Stone buildings with intricately carved wooden balconies line the waterfront. Traditional dhow sailboats drift across the harbor. The pace of life is slow and deliberate. Spending time in Lamu feels like stepping backward through centuries without losing any of the warmth and hospitality that Kenya is known for. Many visitors describe it as one of the most peaceful places they have ever been. Now let us go in the opposite direction. Let us go up. Mount Kenya is the second highest mountain in Africa, after Kilimanjaro, and it sits almost exactly on the equator. The fact that there is a snow-capped peak sitting on the equator is one of those geographical facts that seems like it cannot possibly be true, but it is. Mount Kenya is a stratovolcano that last erupted millions of years ago, and over time glaciers and erosion have sculpted its peaks into dramatic, jagged formations. Climbing Mount Kenya is a serious undertaking, but you do not have to be a mountaineer to appreciate it. The mountain is surrounded by a national park and forest reserve that is home to elephants, buffalo, leopards, and a staggering variety of bird species. The vegetation changes dramatically as you ascend, from dense bamboo forests to alpine meadows filled with giant lobelias and ground cells, plants that look like they belong on another planet. It is an alien landscape in the best possible way. And speaking of landscapes that seem otherworldly, let me tell you about the Great Rift Valley. This massive geological feature stretches from Lebanon in the north all the way down to Mozambique in the south, and Kenya sits right in the heart of it. The Rift Valley is responsible for some of Kenya's most dramatic scenery, including a chain of lakes that are each remarkable in their own right. Lake Nakuru, for instance, was once famous for hosting millions of flamingos. At its peak, the lake's shores were so densely packed with flamingos that from the air, the entire lake appeared pink. The flamingo numbers have fluctuated over the years due to changes in water levels and chemistry, but Nakuru remains a stunning destination. The national park surrounding the lake is also a sanctuary for both black and white rhinoceros, making it one of the best places in Kenya to see these critically endangered animals. Then there is Lake Naivasha, a freshwater lake that is a haven for hippos and over 400 bird species. You can take a boat ride on Lake Naivasha and find yourself within meters of hippos, which, by the way, are statistically more dangerous to humans than lions. There is something both thrilling and mildly terrifying about gliding past a hippo in a small boat and watching it eye you with what appears to be casual indifference but could easily become something else entirely. Further north, you encounter Lake Turkana, sometimes called the Jade Sea because of its